Dr. Beebe?
Present.
Dr. Beebe is present. Dr. Bofi?
Here.
Note, I said Dr. Bofi.
I did. Thank you.
Ms. Bradford?
Here.
Ms. Bradford is present. Mr. Garvey?
Here.
Mr. Garvey is present. Mr. Gio?
Present.
Mr. Gio is present. Ms. Harris?
Here.
Ms. Harris is present. Ms. Hill? Ms. Hill is absent, I believe, today. Dr. Moranti?
Present.
Dr. Moranti is present. Ms. Orange-Jones? Ms. Orange-Jones is not here yet. Mr. Romer?
Here.
Mr. Romer is present. Ms. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Smith is present. And Ms. Heredia, our student rep, is absent today. You do have a quorum.
Thank you. First item.
Your first item is on page 84. Your consent agenda is ready for approval.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Dr. Bofi.
Second.
Second by Mr. Gio. Any concerns, questions, comments? Any objections to the motion? Hearing none, motion passes. Next item.
Your next item is on page 84, item 6.5, consideration of the establishment of Bulletin 140, Louisiana Early Childhood Care and Education Network, related to lead agency responsibilities, coordinated enrollment, and the Unified Quality and Improvement System. The department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent and to direct the BESE president to issue a declaration of emergency effective July 1st, 2015.
We are reordering to get all of the 4-year-old things together to help with being sure we don't pass something that makes another motion a moot point for discussion, so that all people get to have the discussion that they'd like to have about these items. So this item is 6.5. Superintendent.
Madam Chairman?
Superintendent, and then Mr. Garvey.
Yeah, do we have a motion on the floor right now?
Oh, no, we do not. I apologize.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'd like to move approval of the department's recommendation with the following amendments. Passed out to the BESE members a document that was written by Melanie Bronfman, and I'd like to adjust it. I'd like to make the amendments that are listed on here, except that I would like to remove amendment number 1, which starts with the title, Address Concerns About Conflict of Interest, amend section 503C1D 4 to read as follows. Take that one out and go with the other amendments, numbers 2 and number 3. And I sent a copy of this to the department yesterday afternoon, so I assume that they had time to digest it. Mostly what it does is charge the review committee to review particular items that are of particular concern to the early childhood providers. And I hope I'm not misrepresenting that, but I believe that's what it does.
Do I have a second? Second. Second by Dr. Moranti. Any questions, comments?
May I make a comment?
Ms. Superintendent.
Thank you. First, Mr. Garvey, I want to thank you for your thoughtful work on this, and I'll thank Ms. Bronfman as well. Let's, before we get into the nitty-gritty of what are some extremely narrow issues, let's talk about the big picture just for a second, because I think that this discussion could be headed down the road of a lot of parsing of small issues, when we need to take a little moment to celebrate all of the incredible things that have been accomplished by so many people in the room and by yourselves, board members. 3.5 years ago, the legislature passed a law that called on you to unify and create a network of early childhood care and education, where before there were fragments. There was private pre-kindergarten, tuition paying and publicly paying. There was public pre-kindergarten, LA4, Title I, 8G. There was Head Start, some run by school systems, some run by nonprofits. There was child care, some privately funded, some publicly funded. All of them with different expectations, all of them with different fundamental conceptions of what they were there to do. Over the last 3 years, you have taken with the department what I think is one of the most novel policymaking approaches implemented anywhere across the country on this issue, which is that we have asked the practitioners, many of whom are here in the room, to do the work voluntarily. No one forced them, but voluntarily they stepped up and they started working this through. And so we worked out the kinks. We worked out the kinks of enrollment. We worked out the kinks of how you measure child's development. We worked out the kinks of professional learning. And now we have this fall a situation where the law finally comes to pass, now 3.5 years later. Our goal is to ensure that any low-income parent who is seeking a birth to 5 service can send her child to a pre-K, a Head Start, or a child care, knowing that they are not going to be just rolling the dice and hoping that they get a true kindergarten readiness experience. And I believe that we are going to accomplish that. However, let's not be short-sighted and think that just because a law comes into place this year, it means that everything is going to get done and be perfect by this August. It's not. And so what I would urge you today is to see that our policy acknowledges that, and it says, let's take another practice year. And so you're going to hear me today with that refrain. The 15-16 year members is a practice year. It's a bigger practice year than we've had in the past. We're going to practice across thousands of classrooms rather than hundreds, but it's a practice year nonetheless. And what are we practicing? One, today, you're going to accept, I hope, a group of organizations, some school boards, some local nonprofits, some Head Start providers, that are going to be the lead agency locally. We have come to believe that you can't run this out of Baton Rouge, that there has to be a local entity that steps up to coordinate enrollment and that steps up to make sure that every center gets an observation of quality. Second, you're going to vote on the rules of how we will assess quality in terms of the child's experience in this 1-year practice. This does not mean you're etching in stone something that's going to be, exist forever. It means you're voting on how will the 1-year practice be done. And then we'll come back in a year under the new board and we'll revisit and see whether it worked. This all, by the way, after 2 full years of piloting. Now, you've been getting emails that haven't thanked you for any of that. I know that's a big surprise, but it's true. You've been getting calls that haven't acknowledged all of that. No one has reminded you that the advisory board voted on 40 recommendations after 10 hours of meetings 2 weeks ago, and the department is recommending 38 of those 40 recommendations. No one's told you that. What you get in these letters, and I understand, people are excited about this, people are passionate about their work, are the concerns that people have. And so if I take Mr. Garvey's amendments to be evidence of that, let's talk through just a couple of those concerns. One of those concerns that you'll hear expressed, and this is not in Mr. Garvey's amendment struck this out, is that the way that this state is planning to do its outside observation system is not a fair and balanced way in this practice year. We're proposing to have outside observers on a contract with the state that you'll also be voting on later today determine the quality of centers, and to complement that with people inside those communities and centers doing evaluations. The outside would check on the inside. We're doing that because it's efficient, because in Bienville Parish you might have to drive 75 miles to get to the nearest school, whereas in Orleans Parish you might have 20 schools within a 1-mile radius of each other. So it's very, very complicated. It's very local. We're trying to give these local agencies some discretion. Second, expressed in these concerns are concerns about the way that child care is consulted in the process, the way that Head Start is consulted in the process, the way that school systems are consulted in the process, to make sure that nobody, even though there's a lead agency, that nobody is biased. And I think we can all agree that that's important, because we should acknowledge that there are historical tensions across some of these fragments of child care and Head Start and pre-kindergarten and school systems and so on. So what I would ask is that as you hear the comments today, you understand the long context, you understand that what's been done is, I believe, of national importance. You understand that in 95 to 99, whatever it is, % of the case, there has been agreement, and that the issues that you see in front of you today are important, they're real to acknowledge, but they are relatively narrow in the scope of what is a general agreement. I think in handling the amendments, it's probably best to hear the comments, to hear where they come out, and then to talk them through, maybe, Madam Chairman, in that context. I'm happy to address each one of them. But overall, I hope you hear the consensus as much as you hear some of the narrow issue disagreements. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any questions or concerns before we go to public comments? We have quite a few. Dr. Beebe.
With the recommended amendments, and I do know that there is a committee, a review, I just have concerns that we are presented these amendments last minute, and I haven't had time, or we haven't had time to make comparisons to the with regard to the revisions or proposed revisions. Is there an urgency that we approve this policy today, or these policies today, without giving, going back to the council or committee for its review to say, in good faith, we embrace these recommended changes?
My understanding, Dr. Beebe, is these have come out of some things that were discussed and maybe not approved or didn't get accepted by the DOE. They've already met on these items, and also that we do have a little bit of a timeline. Most of these you've seen probably in the numerous emails we've been getting.
I think we can probably, after hearing the comment, of course, your discretion, I'm happy to talk them through each of them. I mean, yeah. I feel like we know them pretty well. I think they're pretty simple issues, and you, frankly, of anybody, Dr. Beebe, you're going to be very familiar with these issues. So my suggestion is we just, at some point.
Yeah, I didn't mean that we wouldn't talk about them now.
In the fairness and transparency for education stakeholders who are concerned.
Right.
I don't even know if they have these recommended changes in their.
Yes, ma'am. I think it came from a group of those. It did not come from us. It came from a group, advocacy group.
It came from a group, but
an advocacy group.
But an advocacy group, but there may be someone with an opposing view.
Well, that's what we're going to have a discussion about.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
How do you prefer to handle this? Do we need to hear comments, or could we get clarification maybe first on by deleting the First Amendment, which I appreciate that. I think that's does wonders for helping the cause. Do we need to have an explanation maybe of where that leaves us by eliminating the First Amendment to the process, or is that maybe not the time to do that?
I think we can certainly do that now.
That would be helpful to me.
Okay.
So the I think all of this comes out of the rest of these, out of the concern that when you create a lead agency, you're giving one group a little bit of authority to run the process as opposed to the others. And it's fair to say that probably 80 to 90% of the lead agencies are school systems. Now, let's be clear. In our rural parishes, and you all know this better than anybody, in our rural parishes, our school systems very often will have the most organizational capacity to do a lot of things, this being one of them. It makes total sense that they would be the lead agency. So this is not a statement about school systems. But I think that in these cases, these are calling for school system, if you're going to run this, or anybody, if you're going to run this, we've got to make sure you're consulting with the right people. And Mr. Garvey, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that's probably the intent of these. So the first one is that in establishing an enrollment system, that the lead agency will establish policies and procedures to do that, but it will do it in consultation with representatives from each type of early childhood care and education program, meaning child care, Head Start, pre-kindergarten, and so on. In the next one,
Before we,
yes, I'm sorry.
before we move on, I'd like to point out that the first one, as you said, is the lead agency would do these things after consulting
Yes.
with the other providers.
Yes.
It doesn't say that that the lead agency has to do what the other providers say, or it doesn't bind the lead agency in any way other than consulting.
Correct.
It's just talking. It's opening the line of communications.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I would say that the pro of that is that it establishes a requirement that they consult, which I think is right. The con of it might be that it probably creates some room for litigation given the specificity of the requirements and some of the generalities of the words. And I'm not an attorney, but when it says certain types of providers, for example, you can imagine that inviting some litigation. Second one is a similar rule that says that this is number 2, that the lead agency shall develop in collaboration with the local community network leadership team, which shall consist of at least 2 representatives from each type of program. I assume that means 2 representatives of child care, 2 representatives of Head Start, and so on. The funding request, meaning, so you take the enrollment, then you come back to the state and you say, state, we need 500 LA4 slots, we need 300 child care slots, we need 600 NSECD slots. And again, I would say the benefit of that is it makes a lot of sense that there would be this kind of collaboration. I think the downside is that another rule probably invites further litigation the more criteria you put on it. But the goal is certainly an admirable one. The next one is the creation of an advisory council. Sorry, is the creation of a working group that is a subcommittee of the advisory council. So it creates another advisory body to you. At the end of this upcoming year, it would make recommendations that are specifically dedicated to the change. Now, again, I think this is a very well-intended thing. I think it probably is something the advisory council itself could probably do, and I'm happy to advise on it, but this really just creates another advisory council.
Madam Chair.
The last one, which is I guess that's 3-4, essentially is an attempt to say, if you just don't get observed, well, what do we do about that in terms of the rating? It's trying to say essentially, if you've created a record that you've emailed the lead agency 3 times and they still haven't shown up, then we're not going to rate you low. The assumption now is that if you don't get observed, you get a 1 on the rating scale. This is saying that if you've emailed 3 times and demonstrated that, and requested an observation, you still haven't gotten one, then that doesn't get counted as well. Again, I think these are all admirable. We probably have some suggestions on how they could be tweaked or improved. One way or the other, I would suggest to you that they are fairly narrow across a huge policy. The first one, which Mr. Garvey did not include, I would suggest is a weightier subject than these other 4.
Dr. Moranti.
I think I just have a few comments that would probably encompass a lot of the other parts of the policy. I see that we're looking at some perceived inequities, and I also see the lead agencies, if they are the school districts, may also be perceived as having some undue influence. So my question really is, as we look at a lead agency that would be responsible, And of course, down the road, you know, I'm looking at a really good, strong policy that could be funded and under state statute. But is it a possibility to have as the lead agency the regions that encompasses all the competitors, also has the staff and the wherewithal to do the grant writing? Because I know that if we move into that enrollment process, the inequity would be those that can afford it will get really good software. Those that can't are going to be struggling. And I don't want to ever hold up a policy because it's not funded. Because I don't think that the legislature is going to really want to fund something unless it's a really good, tight policy that they could stand behind it. So is it a possibility to have the lead agency as a region? And I saw a lot of good work that the regions did, especially when they got that big national grant for, you know, the technology training and all. I'm just wondering if that's a possibility. It takes away those perceptions of inequity and undue influence and who's going to have the influence to fill the seats and how will the competition work its way out. So those are just ideas that I look at for not only this, but also, I don't know why we left out number one, but I want to come back to that later. But I'm just thinking that if we have the possibility of having the lead agency be the region rather than the districts are so strapped. They don't have the money to go looking for these big grants. Or, I don't know, John, I'm just thinking that.
Yeah. Well, here's what we've learned. The enrollment is a very local issue. You really need to understand the contours of the community in order to run an enrollment system. And I can't imagine telling somebody in Baton Rouge that they should run the enrollment system in Donaldsonville, or somebody in New Orleans that they should run the enrollment system in Bellchase. It's just almost impossible to imagine that. I think that's probably why we came down where we came down. Now, this is a year-long policy. If we need to come back in a year and realize that we didn't get it right, that's fine. It's also a no-stakes policy. No one is going to get a grade that means they lose their license this year or anything like that. So I think this is another year of practice. I would say regarding the 5 amendments that were suggested here, or the 4 that I read, I think the first 3 you're probably not going to hear a lot of disagreement about. There might be a tweak here or there, but I don't think there's going to be much disagreement about. My sense is on the last one, you probably will hear some concern from child care providers that the 3 email requirement is an onerous thing that creates, you know, a bunch of confusion and so on. That's my sense. My sense is on the first 3, you probably won't hear a lot of disagreement.
Madam Chairman?
Mr. Garvey?
Yes, Ms. Moranti said she would like to go back and revisit number 1, and I think that would be a good thing to do. But I would suggest that we take care of these other 4 first and get them in place because they are much less controversial and admirable, as the superintendent said. So I think it would be good to take those first.
Thank you.
And
Our
then address
motion
number
does
1.
include only 1 through 4. So that's what we're looking at. Any other comments or questions?
I do.
Ms. Hill?
Regarding the enrollment process, I'm just trying to get a visual of how it would actually be implemented. So currently you have parents, they have a choice if they want to send their child to a Head Start program, or if they want to go through a local school agency, or if they want to do a child care center or private, whatever the case may be. But after reading the new amendments that were presented to us this morning, we will identify a local community network leadership team, meaning the board or with the departments identify the consultant for the local community network leadership team. That's the first question. The second one, from there, this local community network leadership team will identify 2 representatives, one from early childhood care and an education program. And I guess my concern would be who will be responsible. I just don't want to give one group, a small group of people, that much power to say, here's an enrollment, all of the students in this one pot, and then we're going to identify where these children should be allocated or what centers these students will be able to attend. So help me
So
visualize.
you will today be creating the rules for the enrollment system. And it's a parental-driven enrollment system. But let's talk about enrollment, what exists today. What exists today is that if you have 20 different enrollment processes for 20 different centers. If you're a parent, you have to drive or take a bus or walk or whatever it is to all those places to drop off an individual application. You have to find different eligibility for Head Start, different eligibility for child care, different eligibility for LA4. All of those are separate processes. What we're doing is calling on these lead agencies to coordinate those processes. So you have one process, one application, and the requirement is that to every degree possible, the lead agency honors the parent's choice. Parent wants to go to a child care, we try to honor that. Parent wants to go to a pre-K, we try to honor that. I think the one thing we've learned, however, is at some point, someone has to step up and run the process. You can't just say, hey, I hope everybody works this out. That's kind of been the problem all along. And while it might be, I'm not saying you're saying this, but while some might say, well, look, the state should run the process. There is no way we're going to be able to run a good process from Baton Rouge for every community in the state. So somebody locally has to run the process. And the good news is, and I see Dr. Peugeot sitting here, we already have evidence, and I see Dr. Milton sitting here, of really, really good local communities running an early childhood enrollment system. I see Mr. Rakasner sitting here. So there are communities across our state that are already running enrollment systems. We have every evidence they can do it. Just somebody has to do it. Now, to speak to one of Dr. Moranti's concerns, there is funding that is going. There's a state appropriation, and there's child care development funding that will be going to these lead agencies to fund their enrollment systems. So every district will be getting a grant. EBR will be getting somewhere in the order of a $400,000 grant. Cameron might only be getting a $15,000 grant. You know, it'll look different from one place to the next, but everyone's getting a grant to run that process.
Any other board members? If not, we're going to go to the public comments. Please let me remind you that if you choose to speak on this topic, you need to have a card in now. So please put your card in now if you would like to speak to this issue. We will be speaking for 3 minutes. I know that is not enough time. I know that you're passionate and have more to say, but if we get to hear everyone, we will only be able to allot 3 minutes. And so if you will abide by that, we'll appreciate it. If you're a group and you would like to have one speaker, they can have 5 minutes. If there are other people here present that would be speaking. Having said that, let's go with the first speaker. I'm going to call you up 3 at a time, if you don't mind, and that way we'll save a little time. Sonia Joseph, Melanie Bronfen, Carolyn McCall.
Ms. Bradford? And I apologize, I didn't ask my question previously. Can I ask a question quickly?
Surely, while they're
before we go to
coming, you
speakers?
can ask your question.
On the superintendent, on the very first, I guess it's Roman numeral 2, item 1. What is your, it seems to me, I understand, let me articulate what I believe this is trying to address, which is we talked about potential inequities, needing to get the input from the variety of different stakeholders. I understand that spirit of that. But I'm a bit, ask me if I should be concerned, I suppose, or answer if I should be concerned, that the last line of Amendment 1 suggests that each member of the leadership team must sign off on the recommendation to the department or the lead agency, leadership team. I mean, is that suggesting that if one member of this group disagrees that they could stop the whole process? I mean, I'm not trying to be, I just want to make sure I understand that.
And I appreciate you raising it. It does indicate that. It also indicates that there is a legal structure called a leadership team, which there's not. So you could imagine 5 different people with 5 different definitions of what the leadership team is. I think that probably there's a way of getting at this, which is why I suggested tweaks that might say, look, to every extent possible, there's going to be consultation with child care, Head Start, and pre-K, but that doesn't put us in the litigation position that I think potentially some of the provisions you're talking about would. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Cindy Rushing, we're missing a third person, I don't know. Okay, thank you very much. Cindy Rushing, if you'll come down. Sonia Joseph, if you'll begin. And please tell your name and your organization. Push your button on.
Good morning. My name is Sonia Joseph. I'm representing Clara's Little Lambs Preschool out of New Orleans. We are probably the definition of diverse delivery. We have a partnership with LSU to provide early Head Start. We have a partnership with CDI that provides early Head Start. I have 3 pre-K classes plus child care assistance and private pay. So in August, we'll probably have a total of 184 kids at our center. Coordinated enrollment, I've seen how it works with pre-K. And my concern is that parents still do not understand how it works and that we will create even more confusion when we throw child care centers in the mix. Choosing a child care center is a very personal thing for parents. We're suggesting that they just go on a computer, click a center, and everything's going to be fine. When you say that parents have to travel from center to center, that's something they should be doing anyway if they're going to choose child care. I wouldn't expect a parent to go online, see a list of centers, and pick without checking out that center to make sure it's a fit for their family and their child. Most of the kids that probably all of us in the room get are from referrals or previous parents we have provided services for. And it's still not clear how the slots are going to be allotted to child care centers for parents who get child care assistance. How do you determine if my center gets 5, somebody else's center gets 10? How are parents going to know, or how are we going to know how many slots we get for parents to even choose when they're picking a center? And that's a big concern. I don't want parents to go online and pick a center. I want parents to come in my center, meet me, meet my staff, see what we're doing, see how the children are functioning within the center. And I just don't see it working without the parents being totally confused as to what they do, how they do it. And also, when you have free listed on the website, most parents are going to go with a free something or other, not knowing whether they qualify or not. There's no way to know if I qualify for child care assistance, if I qualify for early Head Start, if I qualify for LA4. There's nothing within that coordinated enrollment that asks for income eligibility. So parents are still going to be at square one. They may say, I want early Head Start, and then find out they don't qualify. So then they have to start over again. So I'd like y'all to address that or consider that.
Thank you, Ms. Jessup. Ms. Braun.
Good morning. I think I get a few more minutes because I got...
Melanie, can you turn on the...
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm Melanie Bronfin with the Policy Institute for Children. I feel like, y'all, this is the culmination of a journey that we've all been on for the last 3 years together. And frankly, this bulletin is the culmination of that journey. Last night, I was looking through documents that, have been part of this 3-year process, and I came across a PowerPoint that the superintendent gave to y'all back in 2012. And in that, he actually quoted me, which he hasn't done much of lately. I understand why. But he did then, saying, where I was recommending to please ensure and monitor that Act 3 does not result in fewer high-risk children attending high-quality early childhood education programs, especially for children under 4. The reason I said that, as we've all learned, I hope, is that the delivery system for children under 4 in Louisiana is so different from K through 12, right? What options do parents, and we know that 70% of children birth through 5 in our state have all available parents in the workforce. So their children are not with them while they're working. They're somewhere. We, of course, want them, especially the high-risk children, to have access to the highest quality care that we possibly can. My fear is, without these amendments plus number 1, you're going to have the opposite result. Why? Because childcare does not have to participate in this system. They can just walk away. And that's one of the only options parents have. They're little private businesses, right? And in many cases, unlike Sonia, they have maybe 5, maybe 10 child care assistance kids and 50 or 60 private pay. If it's a system they don't believe is fair, they're going to walk away. That's going to have less options for parents. We should be doing everything in our power to incentivize and encourage the high-quality centers to participate. That's not what this is doing. I challenge you to look at this bulletin and tell me where the definition is of a network, of a local network. Where is that defined? A previous version of this did define it. It called it a consortium of local programs. That's no longer there. I looked up the definition of consortium last night. It refers to a partnership. It refers to a collaboration. And I'm here to tell you that my day job is researching these systems in other states and working with national experts. There is no other state in the country that has gone down to a local kind of service delivery, like what we're talking about doing with Act 3, that does not have some sort of local governance structure where the other programs, all the programs are represented. You can look at Florida, you can look at West Virginia, you can look at Arizona, you can look at North Carolina, on and on. There's some sort of local governance structure. Now we've taken out that definition, and all we have is a lead agency. Later in your agenda, you'll approve the lead agencies. Over 90% of them are school districts, okay? There's absolutely, in this document, in the RFA for the lead agency or in the handbook that's been put out, no opportunity guaranteed for any input by any program in any decision before it's made by the lead agency. None. Now, many of them, as Superintendent said, there are many, and most of them are representing in this room today school districts doing a fabulous job, who have leadership teams, who have sought input before decisions are made. But many don't, and they won't have to. Child care programs have no input. Okay? They've already been asked to sign on the dotted line already for this year that they will participate in the accountability system and the enrollment system without even having a good understanding of what it's going to look like because we haven't defined it yet. And they've done that. They've stepped up to the plate with a whole lot of trust me. And no opportunity for input as they go. They can appeal a decision. Great. They have an opportunity for a public hearing after the enrollment process has been done. Who's at the public hearing? The lead agency that just did it. So what? You won't hear about it necessarily. I would walk away. You have an accountability system, and we'll get to that later, where you may have your competitor coming in to grade you. Okay? And don't kid yourself. We're calling this a learning year, but at the end of this year, these folks are going to be scored and be given a label.
Ms. Bronson, if you could wrap up.
Thank you. So at the end of the day, what these provisions are talking about is creating an opportunity for input at the local level in the decisions that are being made. It's not, the lead agency still has the ultimate decision, but it provides a guaranteed opportunity for input before decisions are made. That's all that it's doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I had a question for the speaker.
Shirley?
Ms. Bronfman, you said that there's a lot of, I think you used the word angst amongst the early childhood care providers. Is it your understanding that these changes would alleviate a lot of that angst?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think it would cause a problem if the department, between today and tomorrow, if we approve these changes today, were to come back with some tweaks, such as removing the last sentence of Section 1, which requires that all of the members of the team sign the document that is submitted?
We can take it out. That was based on West Virginia, where that's required, but I understand.
Thank
You
you.
could take it out. Yes, thank you.
Ms. Rushing.
May I just, and I want to make sure, and if you don't do this, Ms. Rushing, you are the chairman of the advisory group that advises BESE by statute on this issue. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. So I am the chair of the Early Childhood Advisory Council. I also am the Early Childhood Coordinator for Rapides Parish School District. We have been the coordinating partner for the last 2.5 years. We were part of the Cohort 1. And so my role today is to say that, you know, there have been bumps in the road. It has been a learning process. The department has been very good at listening to the field because basically we are the boots on the ground. We've been the boots on the ground for 2.5 years. We started out with Cohort 1. I come from a very large district. We have 25 child care centers that came in the first year. Head Start, Early Head Start, and yes, we are the potential lead agency, but we have from the beginning said that it was a collaboration. And so we have representation of all of the agencies in every decision that we make, whether it's coordinated enrollment, whether it's observations. We have made sure that we put that in place. Bulletin 140 is a reasonable compromise of everything, of all the work that the council did. We gave at our meeting, which did last many hours, we gave the department about 40 recommendations, and like Superintendent White said, they agreed and changed, took 38 of those. And I think that was because they are listening, and we do know that this is a learning year and that we need to give it time to work. We need to see what is happening. One of the things that is so important is that local capacity. We are building that local capacity to govern ourselves. We are, you know, the whole vision of the Birth to 5 system was so that children enter kindergarten ready to learn. So you want high quality, and that's something that we're getting, especially with the class tool. And the class tool talks about having those observations twice a year. And with the local capacity, Rapides was also part of the pilot this year with the testing. And so every one of our toddler and pre-K classes, wherever they were observed fall and spring. And it was effective because we trained our local people, we trained our administration, we trained our directors of child care, we trained our Head Start, our public, to become reliable with the document. And when they went into wherever they went in to observe, they were able to look at the recommendations, and they were able to give that teacher, this is what you can do to improve. This is how you can improve that class, because class is the teacher-child interactions, and it's the most important thing that we do. And if you have effective teacher-child interactions, children are going to get the skills, and they're going to be ready for that higher level of mastery in kindergarten. And so the other thing is, class is such a great, it's for development and growth. And so we looked at that fall, we talked about what we could do to improve, and then we worked with that. Our directors had a first-hand knowledge. They were able to support their teachers in their classrooms because they knew the instrument. And so that local capacity helped us to grow and develop our teachers, which in turn grows and develops our children. So I'm here to support Bulletin 140 because it is a learning year, and I think we need to look at where we are, knowing that in a year we can come back and we can tweak it and we can look at what needs to be done, because the bottom line are our children.
Thank you. And I think Dr. Buggy has a question.
Yes.
So I understand that you're already serving as a lead agency. Is that
We are the coordinating partner.
The coordinating partner.
Yes.
And so has the Have you seen people pull out of participating in this work because you've been the coordinating partner? I've heard from the other testimony that there was the concern that we would lose seats.
We have not. But we established from the get-go that everybody has a voice, and that's our policy and has been our policy. So we started out, the first year we had 12 child care centers. The second year we had 25, and going into year 3, which is the first year without the pilot, all of our child care centers have signed on.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Our next 3, Paula Granger, Mariette Hebert, Pam Inslee. That's be fine. We're missing one.
She's with me.
She's with you.
She doesn't want to come up to the table.
That's fine.
She's a little shy.
Gotcha. Then I'll ask Beth Lane if you'll come down, please. Go ahead and begin. You can begin.
Oh, good morning. Before we get started, I'd like to congratulate Dr. Buffy on your recent achievement. And since I sent you an email, I would like to apologize for not thanking you. That I think you do a lot of hard work here. Our issues in Lafayette, and I represent many of the centers that couldn't be here today. We hold a director meeting every month at the university, and it's on common enrollment. I like common enrollment. I represent the University of Louisiana Child Development Center. We are a 4-star center. Before Quality Start was in place, we were also an NAUIC accredited center. So we like rules and regulations. That's how we run at the university. So we like that idea. So we believe in the whole concept. I just think we need some insurances when it comes to common enrollment. We need it to look at all parties involved, so that it can be fair and equitable across the board. Because right now, when you look at common enrollment, it doesn't always look at the private child care sectors. At the university, we enroll parents 3 times a year, spring, summer, and fall enrollment when students come to school. So for us to do a common enrollment, we're going to miss out on somebody. So we have to sign the dotted line saying we're going to do a common enrollment when we know we can't do a common enrollment. We enroll parents as they come to school and they need our services. Some come from other countries. So common enrollment doesn't always fit everyone. It's a great idea. I think it can work on a local level. I agree with that. But we're going to need some more input from the people that's actually working on the ground to make common enrollment work. Just like the number of slots available for child care assistants. You cannot tell a director that also is the cook, the financial manager, sometimes the pre-K teacher, how many slots do you need for next year? She's not going to know. She won't be able to have that data right away. So that's going to be something in this learning year that we may have to teach child care providers on how to do. How do we do this? How do we give our numbers? But it's not going to work for everyone. If a parent comes to me and I have a spot, regardless if they're child care assistants or not, I'm going to enroll them, especially if they're a student. So we need a little time with common enrollment. We need to step back. I know this is a learning year, but we still need some assurances that if this is going to work, that the lead agencies that are going to be the school system are not going to also have all the data on my children. I don't want to enroll someone, get them set in stone, get the child nice and comfortable, and 2 weeks later they get a phone call saying there's a spot, a free spot in a school system for an LA4 child. So I want some assurances that once they're with me, they stay with me, that they're not twisted back and forth. So we have a little work to do. I think it can be done, but we need some work on this so that it can be fair across the board for all centers, for all children, and that we can get them ready for kindergarten.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I, Madam
Yes.
Chairman, I think you've just made a fantastic point. And by the way, if you ever really want to get inspired about the potential for early childhood, go to Lafayette because they do a fantastic job working with the other providers. It's a very collaborative. It's very inspiring to see. And St. Tammany, too. Let me just make a point. I think you made a very interesting point about, so what happens when a kid enrolls, 2 weeks later the parent finds out there's something better and leaves. And here's what I've heard from child care providers. Not better, but something that
Right.
appears to be better.
Right.
You have a paying system where parents are required to make a copayment
Right.
at a minimum. First, we are going to propose to BESE that the copayment system for families living in a state of poverty go away, and that for families who are impoverished, they no longer have to have a copay.
Okay.
Why is that important? It's important because in a system that doesn't coordinate, when a family enrolls in a child care they may have to pay, then a slot opens up in a Head Start Center or an LA4 where they don't have to pay and they bolt. So actually what we've experienced in other common enrollment systems is that it is fairer to the business owner or the school or the center because you can predict a little bit better the stability without this constant fear of people bolting because someone else with a different value proposition came along.
Right.
And so I think these changes, as you note, it's a good objective. It's going to take time to work out. But the objective of a common enrollment system is actually stability so that people can project, because you don't have a system where providers are constantly potentially trying to take advantage of their different value proposition. And I wanted to thank you for highlighting that point.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paula Garage.
Is your green light on?
It is on now. But I
And
normally
sometimes you have to speak a little more closely.
I normally talk very loud, so I'm going to try to be careful. And I'm representing Lafayette Parish Pilot. Lafayette Parish is a coordinating partner for Cohort 1. Since the inception of the pilot, a contributing factor to its success has been the ability to address the uniqueness of each community. We were given tasks or activities to complete with some guidelines and expectations. The community network then decided on to best achieve the task at hand for their network. If you look back on the work of the Cohort 1 throughout the state, different networks successfully completed all requirements in different ways. What an accomplishment for Cohort 1 as they paved the way for this process. We would like the network to still have the opportunity to develop a plan for class observations based on the makeup and needs of their community. The coordinating partner of Lafayette believes it is unfair to make the assumption that directors and administrators cannot evaluate their own staff with fidelity. For years at the Louisiana Department of Education, teachers have evaluated their own students on state assessments, and principals have evaluated their teachers. We have established a collaborative leadership team with child care providers and are committed to develop a reliable local system with the partnerships of our child care and Head Start partners. We believe, given the opportunity, we can develop a plan with double coding and third-party coding to remove any doubt that exists before the process has begun. Give us that opportunity. The solution to only allow assessors from one school district to assess a different school district's program is impossible to achieve. We do not have the means required for the extra manpower or management of such a task. Once again, let's take what we've learned over the past 2 years from Cohort 1 and continue to move forward. Community networks working together to fulfill the requirements of Act 3 with opportunities to meet the uniqueness of their area. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lane?
Yes, my name is Beth Lane.
No, I don't think so. There you go.
My name is Beth Lane. I'm from St. Tammany Parish. I serve as the Community Network Coordinating Partner. I'm the lead in that, and we have applied to be lead agency. I didn't know until today that a lead agency was powerful. I looked at it as collaboration, continuing as coordinating partner with just a different name. When we wrote our application for lead agency, we had in our representatives on our leadership team because we couldn't write an application in isolation. Our application had to have input from Child Care, Head Start, et cetera. We wanted all partners at the table. So I think if you look at the groundwork that Cohort 1 has participated in from the beginning, it's been about collaboration. And yes, there have been bumps and bruises along the way, but I think today we truly have, I know today, we have a much better understanding of one another and the needs of one another, and consider the needs of one another as priority. So as lead agency, we would make sure, as we are as coordinating partners, that we support each other to get the job done and meet these requirements, and nobody's out there on their own. But a few other things I wanted to share, 2 other things with you today. If we continue on the journey of having the support, both from the LDOE as well as within our own networks and our cohorts, Cohort 1 continues to meet because we need to know what one another's doing, what might work for us, what might not. And by sharing and collaborating, that has been very beneficial. The Department of Ed has had round tables, and I even joked at the end of one of them, after hearing things for several times through round tables, through newsletters, et cetera, nobody can say we don't know that this exists. And because we do know, the biggest killer has been the rumors out there from people who are developing fear. The fear of the unknown is what has happened. And I just want to share with you this story in St. Tammany Parish. We had child care centers who did not join our network. We had 40 people at the very first meeting 2.5 years ago. We had 8 centers, courageous, wonderful centers, and people and directors who joined us, 8. We now have 20 for year 2, and we have 30 of the 40 signed up for year 3, and we have 2 or 3 others who are still on the fence. And we knew we'd have some that said no, and that was fine, and we respect that. But we did say, we'll come back to you on a regular basis. Here's our card, call us. What we noticed as we went around, we decided to do a face-to-face to make sure that people understood what this was and not just a reaction to rumors. And as a result, people came on board because they felt support, and the rumors were dispelled. So that continued collaboration between the LDOE and the local districts and among the different agencies is critical for success. The second point I want to address is the class observations. When I was a classroom teacher, there was really one person I cared about what she said about my observation, and that was my principal. That's the person I live with. That's the person that I have to make sure knows what's going on. And as a team, we can get it better for the kids. Well, it's the same thing now. If we in our local areas cannot have center directors and all of the stakeholders and agencies who are trained to use this tool support the implementation of this, if we are having it to be about quality for children, we're all very professional, and we all make sure it's about the kids. We have to empower each leader, regardless of what the title is, each leader to take that responsibility to grow the professionals in her center or in her school or in her Head Start center, or any of it. So it is that leader that has that ultimate responsibility, and I can tell you that's who the people in the centers listen to and respect the most, not the outsider coming in. So I would like to see us definitely empowered to continue at this local level, and I appreciate the support of you and all of the State Department who's helped us through this.
Thank you very much. Next 3, Melissa Snelling, Desiree Collins, and Patricia Peugeot. Pooja, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much. The first thing I'd like to do is just to commend the work that has happened across this state around early childhood education and the awareness that has come because of the work, I think, to everyone. As I look at my own district and think about how far we've come, in terms of a coordinated effort, it is amazing. You know, when we think about pre-K and school systems, we typically think about 4-year-olds because that's who we primarily serve in the PK realm. And we have maybe a few 3-year-olds, maybe some developmentally delayed kids at an earlier age, maybe some 3-year-old classrooms in early Head Start or in Head Start if we have a need in the community. But you know, as what this has done for me is just opened my eyes to what are we doing 0 to 3. And as a school system, I don't want to take on 0 to 3. I certainly have enough to do, you know. But at the same time, we want to make sure that as kids move through the progression, that they are indeed getting high quality childcare such that as they enter either 4-year-old programs or kindergarten, they are indeed ready. That doesn't come with a whole lot of challenges. And we in Ascension, of course, are the lead agency. And quite frankly, it's not that we want to necessarily be the lead agency, but who else is equipped to do the work in the district? We certainly have a collaboration with our partners in child care, and all other parts of 4-year-old programming essentially rests with us because we are the Head Start provider. We have maybe one private school that has some 4-year-old programming that we work with. Other than that, all 4-year-old programming is our 4-year-old programming. So coordination of 4-year-olds is easy for us. The challenge for us is making sure we're serving every eligible 4-year-old. And indeed, I am using every funding source that is available from the state and putting over $1 million a year in my general fund money into serving 4-year-olds. And at this point, we're just to 72% of eligible 4-year-olds. And so when we look at our report card systems, you know, we're nowhere near the target, even though we're spending a lot of general fund money and really going after any other funding source there is for us to provide this opportunity. As I think about being lead agent, again, not necessarily something that we're dying to do. I had to hire another person in order to make this work, but something that is essential to the success. I too echo the concerns that were voiced in terms of local control and locals working together. For me to think about as a lead agency that I would have to send people into other districts to do evaluations and have other people come into ours seems ludicrous. Certainly, you know, I'm not suggesting that K-12 is the same as PK as early childhood. But when we look at the K-12 model, we entrust the person in charge of that facility to observe and evaluate the people who work in it. Who else would do that? Those are the people who are working day in and day out and seeing the quality of what happens. We have to trust the professionals who are running child care centers. We have to trust the professionals who are working in Head Start centers and in schools and trust them to do it right. The other thing I would say about cross-district observations is someone's got to coordinate that. And again, there's cost and time and personnel in doing that. So those are really the two things that I have concerns about. But I'm excited about the work and excited about where we are as a state and know that we will figure out a way to move forward and make this work well for all the providers who are working with our most precious early childhood learners. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Snelling.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to speak and share on behalf of Sabine Parish. I'm the director of the preschool programs in Sabine. We have 8 school sites, which includes 20 classrooms. We have 1 daycare, so it's a very rural parish. We blend all of our 8G, LA4, and Head Start programs to serve all 4-year-olds in the parish, and it's a very unique setting. Pertaining to the coordinated enrollment, our district has managed to find a happy medium, and we coordinate our enrollment with local daycare through an addition to our application form. Also, our daycare manager attends our registrations and is able to speak with families at that time. We also have a link on our website where coordinated enrollment, it makes it a lot easier. Information is also sent home on pre-K roundup flyers, and we do personal referrals. Now, one of the things that we've run into is our daycare provider has lost some 3-year-olds to our Head Start program. But it all washes out in the end because we always have such a demand for our 3-year-old program and a large waiting list. And so once the dust settles, those 3-year-olds end up going to the daycare. And our collaboration has been great through Cohort 2 pilot. The process really has not been painful. The public stays informed, and we feel like we can manage this enrollment process or continue managing it as we have. As far as accountability, the next concern has been the portion for class observations using the class instrument. Our biggest issue is crossing districts to, as she said earlier, to provide class observations. We're spread very thin already, and in crossing districts, we would need more resources, more money, more time, which we don't have. Instructional support is provided to our teachers through immediate feedback when we do our class observations, and we would like to continue to do that. We are proud of the advancements that have been made in early childhood, and we hope to continue to support in all that we can do in Sabine Parish. I ask that we be able to continue to observe within our districts, and by doing so, we know our teachers' strengths and weaknesses, and we can provide specific and targeted suggestions for improvement. I appreciate the work you all have done to ensure a more cohesive early childhood program in our state, and we appreciate you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Good morning. I'm not Desiree Collins. She yielded the mic to me if you approve.
Would you please give your name and agency?
I'm Bobby Robinson, Preschool Director of EBR Public Schools. And thank you so very much for the opportunity to share with you the progress and all the things that are going in the EBR cohort pilot. We are the coordinating agency and selected by our different partners to apply to be lead agency. We began this process when we first heard about the legislation. I mean, we said to ourselves, they've got to be kidding. This is outrageous. We just cannot do this. But I just want to tell you that we have moved from I, me, you, to we, and to us. We started meeting earlier. We applied for Cohort 1, but realized that we needed to have more input, and so we started meeting earlier with all of the different groups that provide services for the early child. And we got to know each other, started knowing each other, because there were a lot of walls. I mean, we were territorial. I mean, this is me, that's you. I mean, I don't know anything about you, and I never really, this is my 14th year, and I really never reached out and touched further than Head Start. But this legislation allowed us to reach into each other to get to know each other. We are moving from 33 child care providers to 91 in EBR Public Schools. We have 16 Head Start locations, early Head Start, the City of Baker School System. We have 15 supporting partners that are there holding our hand. VOA is in here, and I'm sure United Way is in here, Mrs. Broffin's group, and then there's John Next Horizon. They are there giving us advice and helping us along the way and participating with us. I mean, we've gotten all kind of donations to help us to be successful. We knew that we needed to all bring resources together, and we do that. We meet twice a month. There's a governing board, which there are 2 representatives elected by the different groups. The child care has 2 representatives, early Head Start, EBR Public Schools. Even though we are large, we have 2 voting representatives. Everybody, early Head Start has someone involved in that. And our private and parochial, they have 2 representatives, even our supporting partners, because they are part of it. It has not been easy. I just want to let you know that. But I tell you what, it's the best thing that has ever happened. Because I've been doing research since 2007 about the number of students that are coming to EBR public schools without early childhood instruction, not any. That data is available to you if you'd like to see it. And we have over 1,000 that come into kindergarten without any, not even since birth. So we have room, and we needed somebody else to help us along the way. We wanted to, but everybody was so territorial. But now we are very happy about what's going on. The concern that I think that we are going to have is cross parish. I don't believe anybody around can accommodate our parish with all of the observations. We really need more time to even get our whole process so that we can implement it with fidelity. We need more time. With the moving to 59 other child cares, we really need more observers, and we've got to work on that process. To go across parish will cause some confusion. But I want you just to consider, I wear my flower every day, and it represents the network also, to help us to really, really keep the flower bright, because this legislation has done that for us. I appreciate it, and I thank you.
Thank you. Our next 3, Susan Spring, Paula Polito, Monique Roget. Please be sure to introduce yourself and your agency. We'll begin on this end and come back this way.
Thank you. My name is Susan Spring.
Check to see if your light is on.
It's the light's on.
You just need to pull it a little closer, maybe.
Okay. Is that better?
Better. Thank you.
All right. My name is Susan Spring, and I am the Executive Director of the Regina Chaley Child Development Center. We're the 2nd largest Head Start grantee in the state of Louisiana. We serve Head Start in 5 parishes on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain, and that means that we're actually in 6 pilots or 6 networks. Washington has 2 networks, St. Tammany, Tangipahoa, Livingston, and St. Helena. And so we have the pleasure of having many, many experiences in working on the networks. We were in the first cohort with St. Tammany, and then the second with Tangipahoa, and now we're in the third with the remaining 4. And those remaining 4, of course, have kept us very busy, all coming in at the same time. I'd like to make a few comments, first of all, to echo what Beth Lane said as far as working together, because we have been able to do that. And I think from the very beginning, because of the fact that I was a Head Start organization and the state was coming into our business now where they had not been before, I have attended meetings since before the approval and the passage of Act 3. So I've been very involved in this from the beginning. I would also like to echo the comments made by the speaker from East Baton Rouge, also as far as working together, because as far as what we've learned about each other, it has absolutely changed what we know and how we work together, in spite of the fact that, as she said, we didn't think we could do it. I'm pleased to hear that this is going to be a learning year, and so the consequences will be removed from our actions. And I'm also delighted to hear Superintendent White say that that copay will be removed from child care assistants. That is going to be very, very important in the child care centers being able to participate in that. So thank you. As far as the consultation and the collaboration, I can tell you that because we're in 6 networks, I have from one extreme to the other, mostly because the third pilot group is new to this. And with the school systems being the lead agency, they are used to doing school by themselves. And so it's often just a matter of helping them learn that they have partners in this now. And before you write something and submit it and just call me and say, oh, we've decided, we need to make sure that we are going to be participating. And so when the decision is made about the group working together and the requirement, we need to make sure if that doesn't happen, what are those consequences? And then regarding the enrollments, I also want to just make sure that you are aware that this can work in different ways in different places. Obviously, it's going to be different. It's interesting that if you're a small place, you might be able to do this on paper, but having the money to provide software for this in the larger parishes is going to be very expensive, and some will not be able to step up to that unless maybe it's through the funding that Superintendent White mentioned. So we do have concern for child care centers feeling that they're not going to be able to meet these requirements and feeling that they're not going to get their share of children. And I think that as we work together more, that we will be able to do that. And so thank you for the opportunity to present this, and thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. Ms. Polito? Oh, I'm sorry. Whoever wants to go next.
Hi, my name is Paula Polito. I am the owner and also serve as the director for Berry Cherry Tree. We are a 5-star center in Jefferson Parish, and my center serves over 150 children. About 10% of those children are on child care assistance. I also serve an NSECD program and just recently been awarded an LA4 program, so we're really excited about that. My center has been part of the Jefferson Parish pilot from its inception, and I also serve as a member on the advisory council. I'm actually 3rd generation in this industry, so my grandmother started the business back in 1972. And we have certainly seen the landscape of childcare change over the past 40 years. My father's in education, and he says, you know, he's a principal at a local high school, and he has definitely said this has changed, and it's all for the better. I definitely want to commend the Department of Education on the incredible work they have done, including reaching out to me specifically. I've had Jenna at my center visiting, looking at my classrooms, and we've never had that before, so that's incredible. Had conversations with Derek. It makes an owner feel really good about their work when we have people like Jenna and Derek come to our centers and make us feel good about what we're doing. I'm specifically speaking to you in concerns around the observations. So I'm trained as a trainer. I've got all this reliability training under my belt, and I also train people to become reliable. So in Jefferson Parish, and a colleague sitting to my right here, we at this point do not have the capacity to do what we're charged to do. We're a larger parish. And my concern is where directors are having to observe other directors' centers. Monique, while she's my colleague, she's also my competition. I don't want to have to be charged with going into her center and observing her and giving her a grade that could potentially change her funding. I am certainly interested in thinking outside the box of how we can do that and increase the capacity. I am a 5-star center, so with QRS, we had third-party observers. Right now, I know the demand is for 2 observations per year per classroom. That's a lot, especially given the capacity that we have. So how we get that done, I'd like BESE to consider what options we have, but to try to forbid the directors from observing other directors.
Next, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Monique Fruge, and I'm with Carly Care Kids in Jefferson Parish. I am a 4-star center, I have a capacity of 106 in my building. I am too also, I have the NSECD program, and I've been awarded to partner with Kingsley House with an early Head Start. So my concern is actually focused on common enrollment. Because the common enrollment is very vague and is not anything that's really precise on exactly how the policy and procedures are going to be laid out, my issue would be that who's going to educate the parents? What kind of parental education are they going to have in reference to selecting a fair choice? I'm ecstatic that they're available to have a choice to choose whatever center or school or Head Start that they want to go to, but who's going to educate them on the fact that child care providers are parallel to the school system in Head Start now? We're not the quote-unquote babysitting entity that we once was thought of. We actually are doing, teaching strategies goal. We have class assessments. I am actually a class coach, so I go out to do assessments on my own to other centers. So I'm just afraid that the parents won't know that we have the same, parallel things that a school system has. With the school system being our lead agency, it does cause some kind of thought process with being biased, because who's to ensure that that's going to be streamlined accurately? Again, I have 2 pre-K 4-year-old class that's unoccupied. So if I was a parent and I was trying to select the school to go to, and I'm just looking at the website and I see that this is a list, majority of the parents are going to select a school before they select the child care. And then they're going to probably go to Head Start, because they're going to always look at free first because it's equitable. So I'm just want the security in ensuring that our parents have been educated on what child care centers offer. We offer certified teachers as well. We offer the same advantages as a school system.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Thank you.
Ms. Bradford.
We have a question, please. Dr. B.
Yes. I can appreciate your concerns, but I do know, and we heard the comments made by many within the school systems, certainly Superintendent Peugeot, and I know there's competition, but I also know there is a lot of collaboration. In fact, my school system is engaged in the Act 3 initiative, but a meeting was held whereby all child care providers, the school system, Head Start, they presented an opportunity for parents to find out those services offered by the different providers, if you will. And so once again, it's an opportunity to collaborate, and it's imperative that you have that working relationship with school system personnel, because it is working in many districts, and I know it's that fear that you won't be able to market your product, if you will, but the opportunities have been presented, and I think that should be a conscious effort for those who are involved in this process.
And I agree with that, and I'm also with the cohort too. It's just that we are collaborating and working together, but the consistency. We would, want it to be a little more consistent, and that everyone is working together, meaning that Head Start, the school system, everybody is working together, the child care centers as well. And I think that we're looking to ensure that we have the consistency. We also have a different dynamic in Jefferson Parish, because the school system has to go through the parish council in order to get things approved. And I'm not sure if the lead agency, being that it's the school system, will have to do that as well. That's a totally different dynamic that, other parishes have to, encounter. But we have to encounter that. So it's not just a decision that's made by the school system. They have to bring these things to the parish. And the local parish they don't really know anything about early childhood because we've gone there to speak with them. And they have no knowledge of what early childhood or any of that information is all about. That's at the school board level. So that's where a lot of my uncertainty comes from.
And I appreciate you bringing that to light because I'm speaking to my experience in St. Martin, and we're small, rural, and we do have the opportunities to collaborate. So in your situation, I can appreciate that it may be more challenging, and that's something that we need to consider.
Thank you, Dr. Beebe. Superintendent?
Members, let me just make one point. I want to, first of all, commend the three speakers for their very eloquent statements. I've heard them speak before, all of them.
Thank you.
The funding is an issue that I think has not been discussed in this. And I want you to know that I think as a backdrop to a child care center's ability to compete for public funds is the question of is the competition on a level playing field? And I would say the answer in the past has been no. And I want to be candid with you about that. While I don't think that LA4 is equitably funded or NSED is equitably funded, child care has really not been equitably funded. It's been systematically cut. It's not been a priority in the state's budget. And I think this would all be a much easier discussion were that situation to be rectified, because business owners are rightly saying that competition is not real competition unless there's equal resources. Last week we announced our intention to bring to you a policy to increase to essentially the LA4 level the per student or per child funding for child care. Our state has been leaving millions of federal dollars on the table because the rate of reimbursement for a child care center and for their parent has not been nearly what it should have been to compete with LA4 or Head Start. Raising that money will allow more parents to participate in child care. We cannot have a program for poor people that poor people can't afford. So I'm hoping that that will rectify at least some of the concerns that have been rightly expressed.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
A question for the superintendent.
Superintendent.
I don't fully understand where the extra money is going to come from and why we weren't using it in the past.
Well,
was there a matching? Local dollars that we weren't putting up the matching dollars to get federal dollars?
The way that child care funding works is very different from the way that we're used to in K-12 education and in Head Start too. We basically create one big grant. Parents get to go for free. Kids get to go for free. Same in Head Start. Child care is different, and there's two elements of it. Number one, there's a required copay. So even if you make literally no money, you have to pay something to go to child care. Second, you then, based on the hours that your child is going to child care, you generate a stipend. And the child care center may charge $10,000 per year, and you only get a stipend of $1,700. Because remember, this is a full year service, not a 9-month service. So we have families getting $1,700 per year to pay for a full year service. Well, of course, child carers are saying, not only can I not afford this to begin with, but I certainly can't compete with LA4 and Head Start, which is completely free with transportation. So why have we been doing that as a state? I think part of it is we too haven't been talking to each other. Remember, this was overseen by a different department than LA4. So we too haven't been talking to each other. When we started talking to each other, we started realizing this. And what we realized is the rate of reimbursement is so low that families aren't going to child care anymore. So we're not spending a bunch of money that we could spend if those parents went. So the question is, well, what will get them to go? Upping that amount of money. So we're leaving literally tens of millions of dollars on the table every year that if we just increase that stipend, parents will take advantage of. It's not additional money. It's certainly not additional state money. It's all federal money, but we are leaving tens of millions of dollars of federal money on the table. Increasing that amount will drive more parents to at least have a viable option of child care, and they can choose, as you said, which one is best. But what we don't want to ever hear from somebody is, gosh, I'd love to go to that child care, but I just can't afford it, when the whole point of child care is to create an affordable service.
Okay, follow-up question. Am I hearing you correctly in saying the feds left it up to us to decide how much money each parent got or each child got, and we decided to set it low in order probably to cover more children? And we ended up setting it so low that no one wanted to use it, so we can go back and, okay,
yes,
thank you.
Yes. I'm hoping that will alleviate some of the concerns about competition.
Kara Farmer Primo. Desiree Collins, Bob Lansing. You may begin.
Good morning. My name is Kara Farmer Primo. I work at the Picard Center for Child Development at UL Lafayette. And the Picard Center has been responsible for conducting the third-party class assessments for the past 2 years. We have a new director coming into the center who currently won't start until July 1st, so actually I'm going to read a letter of introduction on her behalf. Dear members of the Louisiana Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, it is my pleasure to introduce myself as the incoming director of the Cecil J. Picard Center for Child Development and Lifelong Learning and the Lloyd Rockhold Eminent Professor of Early Child at UL Lafayette. My official appointment date is July 1st, 2015, and currently I am busy packing and moving eastward. I look forward to our first team project at the Picard Center. As we undertake the important business of third-party assessment of teachers in classrooms, in the Class Act project, I'd like to share some views on the process and importance of reliability and cooperation. For the past 30 years, an exhaustive body of convergent research has continually demonstrated the lifelong importance of high-quality early care and education. Coincidentally, I have been privileged to engage in the development and evaluation of numerous community-based early childhood centers of excellence, as well as to conduct national broad-scope research related to early literacy and assessment of early learning. In recent years, states across the country have been implementing thoughtful quality improvement initiatives targeting young children in the care and educational programs which serve them. Evidence-based best practices indicate that this quality is likely a mix of high-quality learning environments, engaged families, and well-prepared teachers. Measurement of these constructs has proved challenging. Thus, since 2007, I and my colleagues have been examining the impact of the fidelity of the classroom assessment scoring system as a professional development vehicle and a primary measure of quality. As I'm sure you are aware, the CLASS tool is designed to provide a lens for rigorous examination of the interactions between teachers or caregivers and the children they serve. Currently, at least 16 states and the Office of Head Start use CLASS as an essential indicator of classroom and instructional quality. The state of Louisiana has developed a plan that relies on CLASS as a primary measure of quality that is administered to selected classrooms twice annually at the local level by a team of locally trained evaluators. A third class observation is conducted in randomly selected classrooms to determine the overall reliability of class scoring by a team of third-party examiners. These parallel observations form a unique model by which the department asserts a commitment to local control for initial and year-end class observation, the result of which generally determine performance profiles of quality. Additionally, in recognition of local capacity and the need to train administrators and teachers, the department promotes the lead agency programs use reliable class scores to drive individual and group professional development. Furthermore, like any worthy measurement system, Louisiana continually tests class reliability with external observations. These observations are designed to verify levels of quality while identifying sources of unwanted bias, promoting statewide increases in the reliability of all observers. As we begin our work, the Picard Center believes that one of the purposes of this upcoming learning year in 15-16 is to examine and refine and increase reliability. Moreover, the Picard Center has developed an ongoing series of touch points and activities that will ensure that the third-party observers are conducting reliable observations. We thank you for the opportunity to share our thoughts today, and Dr. Burstein expresses her positivity in working with the board and colleagues across the state. Respectfully, Dr. Karen Burstein.
Thank you. Ms. Collins.
Good morning. My name is Desiree Collins. I'm the director of Simple Pleasures Early Learning Center in Baker, Louisiana. We are a 4-star school. I represent small child care centers. My business has been in operation for 20 years, coming up in January. We are currently a 4-star school. We're very passionate about what we do in early child development and how we stand as a light for the community. I'm very thankful, Mr. White, for you acknowledging the gap that exists with funding with early child development. Through my struggles to be able to stay open only because I believe in what I do for families and children, it's been a tremendous compromise when it comes to what we're dealing with financially, as well as providing services by teachers who are qualified to do the job and properly compensate them in order to stay competitive. But we're still here. And we are still here because we believe. And when this program came along, it only supported what I thought was possible in early child development. And it is such a blessing to still be here and see it come into pass, where it's something that allows child care centers, whether they are large or small, to continue to stand. And so I chose to stay small because I believe it's possible for small child care centers to be able to provide quality service equitable to others. The programs that you have in place, whether it's quality or class that we actively participate in, are proving that to be true. And it allows us to be a light for other centers that is possible. But I'm here to represent them, that there are many of us who cannot sit here today. Because when you're running a small center, you are the janitor, you are the cook, you are the director, and you are so many other things. And so I wanted to make that sacrifice to be here today. Some of the concerns I have for centers who may not be here are that when we're looking at the scoring system, when it exists as a pilot this year, which means it's the beginning, it's the foundation, and realizing that now you hear us and that there's not enough funding available for small child care centers who receive child care funding from the state because we care about the kids who are truly low income, which is what this program says is intended to do, that we need some support to be able to continue what we're doing. And when the pilot says that you're given a score, whether it's something that parents read, and I think that very few parents are going to read and say, oh, well, it's just a pilot. Why is my center not superior? Why is my center considered proficient? So while obviously you hear our voices, because I heard what you said just now, I want you to hear the voice in another tune to realize that this could be detrimental to centers. Not only are we competing financially to just stay open, and thank you for looking at giving us more funding to be equitable, because if we're proving ourselves by being able to come to par with quality as well as class, and our teachers are showing that they're also qualified, then we should be able to receive the same funding and get the same opportunities that other programs that provide the same quality of service to LA4 programs do. Thank you for listening to us. I need your help. When I can think about my other centers who are competing, and I'm encouraging them to stay open, how can they survive when they did all they could to believe that they could still stay open, and now they could possibly receive scores that may seem like they're not worthy of being able to stay open and possibly close? Because I want to piggyback on what other people are saying. They may not be able to survive, and the programs that we believe in won't be able to stay open only because they got a score from a pilot program that didn't have concrete criteria to make the decision. So I want to thank you guys for hearing our voices and for doing what you've done up to this point, because my goodness, it gave me reason to believe again.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Mr. Lansing.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to talk with you this morning. My name is Bob Lansing. I'm the director and owner of Central Early Learning Center, just north of Baton Rouge. We've been in business come August 30 years. We're a 4-star center. We are licensed for 179 children, so we're a medium to large center. And I come to you this morning with some concerns dealing with Bulletin 140. It's evident in all the work that's gone into the things that have happened since Act 3 was enacted to this point. A large group of people put a lot of time and effort into the work that has transpired to this point. Overall, I think I have to say I can go along with Bulletin 140, but I do have some concerns dealing with 140, knowing that it's going to be an emergency plan at this point, and that it'll be a document that we can work on it further into the future. With that said, lead agencies are an area that I do have some concerns about. We're in a pilot network group, which we have a great relationship with other child care centers and our school system. The Central Community School System with Mr. Falk as the superintendent. We have a great relationship working with them. They are the lead agency at this point. What I'd like to mention is those systems that are out there that don't have those kind of relationships, that haven't had the opportunity to build the close relationship. We have one school system with 5 other child care centers, so we're a small group and able to meet together and work together through this leadership team. I would like to see something in the bulletin that would spell out and define these leadership teams and the network itself, the lead agency itself. I think that would go a long way in relieving a lot of angst that a lot of centers are having. There are some areas, like I said, that don't have the relationship that we're able to have, where they're maybe competing for the pre-K-4 slots, and those centers count on those children to make ends meet, and to lose those slots would be detrimental to them. Another concern I would have is the scoring of the class observation tool. How do we go about setting that up in a way that would be logistically economic as well as fair and across the board? That would be a definite concern of mine. Do I have a firm answer to that? No, I don't. But we do have the learning year to work toward that, and I'm thankful for that. The report card, even though we will receive a label at the end of the year, knowing that it's, again, a learning year, that label is going to stick with these groups for a year. They'll have that label for a year, whether it's adequate or not. Because of what we know being a rule of being transparency, these things being printed and given out to the public as well. So there are some concerns along those lines. Having those connotations. I do appreciate the work that Mr. White and his team has done. It's been I know they've done a lot of work, but I guess the bottom line is when you have a document, something in writing, that's what stays around and it seems to live, and people tend to come and go from time to time, and assurances are made, and while I believe those assurances will be kept as to the ability that they are able to, people don't always stay around and they move. So having a document that has those things in writing, I think, would go a long way.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Norma.
Madam Chairman.
Yes. Oh, I'm
Can I
sorry.
just ask a follow-up question?
Yes.
Just for the
Mr.
gentleman.
Warren?
Yes, please. Just one follow-up question. Thank you for your perspective. What do you think has enabled your center to have the positive relationship that you've been able to foster with the district?
Well, we as directors met for years. I mean, we've been meeting for years. It's something that we started probably 5 years ago, maybe longer, meeting together as a group, just at lunch, talking through the things that we had going on in our centers, the concerns. And probably 2 or 3 years ago, we included the school system as well, meeting with. So we've already had a network, per se, going before this came about. So I think that went a long way to help smooth that transition.
And yet, even though it's worked for your center, you still believe it wouldn't work for others. It could potentially.
I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying that I have some concerns about that. I think there's that level of competition in some areas that where if they don't have the relationship that maybe we have in our community, that I can see that tearing a group apart
Okay.
and then pulling them together.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Norma Grace, Jonathan Pierce, and Jody Lair. We'll begin with you. Is the green light on?
Green light on.
Okay.
All right. My name is Norma Grace, and I'm here today representing the Women's Leadership Council of the United Way of Southeast Louisiana. Our Women's Leadership Council for the last 10 to 12 years has invested highly in what we call Success by Six in early childhood. And we're thrilled to be working with you all on Act 3 and in a partnership with many of the providers in our area. We have rebuilt child care centers. We've worked on quality child care. We've done so much where we've invested our money, and this is a fabulous opportunity to continue this work. There are a couple of things that I'd like to say, and I'm really glad I'm in the role that other speakers have gone before, because I think everybody's saying the same thing. You've heard from speakers in areas where there is a coordinated local team, and they're saying it's working. You've heard from areas where it is not a coordinated leadership team, and it's not working. What we're really asking you to do today is to memorialize this local leadership team, because you are hearing it works when people are given the opportunity to participate. So what we're really asking today is for you to amend the Bulletin 140 to make sure that there is representation from all program types in the leadership team. That leadership team should be required to develop the policies and procedures for the enrollment process, and the lead agency should seek input from the leadership team in the request for funding for the publicly funded programs, and Bulletin 140 should provide for the creation of a work group to research the effectiveness of the coordinated enrollment process conducted in the learning year and make recommendations for BESE for the 16-17 year. What's really interesting, we're all calling this a trial year or the learning year, but at the end of this year, the programs are going to have a label. They will be proficient, needs assistance, and so forth. So they will be labeled for the next year. This becomes really important to get it right from the get-go, and you have that opportunity. I think we're all saying the same thing, but let's make sure it's put into the bulletin so that everyone has an opportunity to participate equally. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Are you finished?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lohr.
Hi, my name is Jody Lohr, and I serve on the Advisory Council. I also co-own 3 child care centers in the Baton Rouge region. And most importantly, I'm a mom of a child who's gone through 3 years of the pilot. I'd say we do too good of a job. She's very good at arguing now. Her logical skills are improving. I'd like to offer my support for Bulletin 140 today. It's not perfect, but you know, I have concerns as well. And while we haven't agreed on everything in the 3 years that I've been involved in the process, the department has been very responsive to taking those concerns and actually making actions on them. So, you know, what I'd like to see is having more than one indicator for the letter grade. I hear the concerns of the enrollment process. I'm fortunate to be in a parish that has a very good working coordinated enrollment. But I think the solution is that we can work together this next year and have a data gathering year and come back together. I mean, even on the advisory council, we haven't figured out all these issues. So I appreciate the learning year, and hope you guys would consider allowing us to have further input into the process.
Thank you, Ms. Lohr. Ms. Smith, did you have a question?
Well, I certainly think we can hear the other speaker, but I did want to comment on I think with all the testimony that we've heard today, I don't even think that we have any cards in opposition, but I think with the amendments that have been offered up, that certainly that addresses your concern with regard to the leadership team, and I think it was pointed out about an hour ago even that the under the coordination of the enrollment process, it guarantees the leadership team must be in place. And so I think that's addressing what your concerns are. So I think we've got it down to, we all feel that everybody supports Bulletin 140, but these amendments that have been offered this morning, minus the one that we were deleted, have addressed the concerns.
I think they have, and I think that's terrific that there's the dialogue going on. What's really exciting is everybody said that they're talking and listening. We need to keep that talking and listening going and make sure that the local participation is there, and I think it's terrific.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. I think that the amendments that have offered now satisfy that. And then the concerns that all of you have voiced this morning, I think we've taken care of that by deleting the first one, the first amendment that was going to be offered.
Mr. Pierce.
Thank you very much. I am Jonathan Pierce. I am the president of the Child Care Association of Louisiana. I'm also the president of Sugar and Spice Preschools with 4 locations in Acadiana, and a member of PEACE, which is Partners in Early Childhood Education in Lafayette. We believe that Bulletin 140 is a strong move in the right direction. We do absolutely understand and agree that there are some issues with it, specifically, and you've heard it all, coordinated enrollment issues, the conflict of interest with class observations, the penalty of a low class score if there is if there's a non-reporting. But with that being said, we understand it is a learning year, and again, you've heard all this. We have in the past not had the opportunity to sit here in front of a group such as yourself and explain our concerns. In the past, it's been just regulations handed down, different things just handed down to us. We haven't had a voice like we've had now. We haven't been able to, in the past, sit with the leadership teams that we are now able to sit with. We have also, the department is aware of those concerns. They have been very aware. They've been listening. They have assured us as well, and they have committed to working with us to, with CCAL, the Advisory Council, to ensure fairness and equitable playing fields while we're preparing these children for kindergarten. We have placed a lot of trust in the department, and it's something that was very difficult for the industry, for CCAL to do in the past with other agencies. And it is extremely important for you all to be aware that we have placed that trust in them, and it is a big step for us. There are still some reservations, but we are still in constant communication, and we expect this learning year to be a data gathering year and very important piece of the process in ensuring that this bulletin is the exact bulletin that needs to put us in the right direction. We've really worked hard, and I thank you guys for listening and spending countless hours listening to testimony on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Veronica Buckley, Pam Miley, John Warner Smith. My apologies. We'll begin with you. Green light down at the bottom.
That'll work. Okay. Good morning. Thank you again to the board for hearing my input and for this opportunity. I represent East Bedford Parish Head Start program. I'm an education specialist in our local program. We have over 1,500 students and over 13 sites, 3 of which are early childhood sites. So y'all know we are pretty busy. I have 2 concerns, and thank you again for allowing me to speak. My first concern is the Class 2 being the guiding force for, you know, the interactions, that being the one criterion. That's my first concern. And what I offer is that aside from the class 2, which we are for, positive interactions, we know it's evidence-based. We know it works. We know it's been proven. We've been able to debrief our own teachers, give them feedback, and then it's continual. The process never stops. Starts over every year. But the thing is that being the only criterion. It's also proven that parent engagement is a huge piece in what works for preschool children, early childhood children. The war on poverty that Lyndon Johnson addressed when Head Start first began, it proves that. And it's still a guiding force in Head Start programs across the parish today. And I don't think that should be, and I'm not saying it's being thrown out, but we should look at other criteria. And the way to do that I suggest is have a leadership team. I hear everybody say about a voice, we're speaking, we're listening, we're talking, we're collaborating. That's true, we are. But I think to get other criteria in, you need to have a team a leadership team where all the stakeholders are involved and they're able to say, can we look at this? Can we look at this? And I think parent engagement is a huge piece. Particularly for parent engagement, they need training. The demographic that we deal with today, let's face it, some of them are teenagers. They're teenagers. We deal with the very young, and if we're truly going to address this war on poverty, if we're going to truly address the unity for early childhood programs across this state, what the war on poverty with Lyndon Johnson proved is that you have to reach back and you have to get those parents, no matter how young, no matter how old. We have grandparents raising preschool children, early childhood children. You have to reach back, you have to meet their needs as well. We provide resources, we provide training for continuing ed, we provide training for even understanding how early childhood works. We provide training and resources for them understanding the outcomes of their children, just simply how their children learn best. And that has to be done. And I think that's a good criteria because it's already been proven. It's a part of our federal performance standards. We have to do it. But still, it stands to reason. Let's include the parents. That's just one of my suggestions. Yes, ma'am. And then my second thing is, well, that's about it. Just making decisions. Oh, and even the board for the lead agency. That was the second thing. Just for the lead agency. Again, representation across the board instead of just the school system. Have we been collaborating? Yes. But all stakeholders should be at the table when it comes to making decisions, because during this pilot year, we're going to learn things. We're going to see some things. We're going to know some things. That's the reason why it's a pilot. But I think to avoid bias, to avoid subjectivity, that you should have other stakeholders as a part of the lead agency, just as they do in other states. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
Good morning.
Good morning.
John Warner Smith. I'm CEO of Education's Next Horizon, and I'm Vice Chair of the ECCE Advisory Committee. Just a couple of points. Let me say, first of all, that we fully support Bulletin 140 and all the terrific work that's been done up to this point by the department. There are some concerns. You've heard most of those, all of those at least here this morning that we have. I'd like to just comment briefly on. We partnered with the Policy Institute several months back and sent you and others a policy brief outlining some recommendations on Bulletin 140, the accountability system and the enrollment system. And so our recommendations, I think, are fully documented. Primary in my mind is this issue of having one indicator. I won't belabor that point. I think you get it. And at some point I embraced the department's recommendation that we use this as a learning year, that we gather data on the informational metrics and come back with some analysis of that information. Hopefully the advisory council will respond and send you some different recommendations for the inclusion of other indicators. Now, on this issue of coordinated enrollment, you know, I think the problem with this bulletin, at least that component of the bulletin is that we never define what that really means. We define coordinated enrollment with the words coordinated enrollment. We don't paint a very clear picture of what the outcomes of coordination really are, in both coordinated enrollment and coordinated observation. So I would suggest this. I get what Melanie's saying. I support in spirit what her concerns are, and they're very real concerns. But also hear the superintendent's concerns, at least about the recommendation of imposing some governance structure on the lead agencies. But I would suggest some wording like this that would be included either in the bulletin, either in the bulletin or in the agreement with the lead agencies, that the lead agency shall develop specific policies and procedures for how the requirements of 703B will be implemented, including procedures to ensure the input of all members of the network in the design and administration of a coordinated enrollment system. That stops short of telling the lead agency how to do it, of imposing some kind of governance structure, but at least requiring that there be a process of inclusion. That's my comments. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Hello, my name is Pam Miley. I have Little Red Schoolhouse in Covington. It's a 5-star center, and I've had it 41 years. So I've seen a lot of changes in education. I have a lot of things I'd like to tell you, but since Superintendent White said that the child care copay is going to go away, I'm about to fall under the table. Because the families I serve need that so badly. And for all the other things we're here about, it's just going to help so much. Because even with the one enrollment, it's free or pay, just like you said a little while ago. And to get them to a point where people can stay in private child care centers if they want to, because if they're low income, that fee can go away. As an example, I have people that make $11 an hour and their copay is $80 a week. Can't afford to pay that. They've got to eat. So anyway, I'm in the Cohort 1 pilot in St. Tammany Parish. We have a wonderful pilot. We work together. We have child care, Head Start, public school. We're all together trying to do everything we can get done. I think we have a successful pilot. The only concern I'm having right now is about the assessments. I'm a little worried about that. People talked about competition, not even a competition level, but I don't feel secure in going out and rating centers that are in my close neighborhood. And I know these are all things to be worked out later, but I did want to say, something about it, that I know crossing parishes, we can't send people running across different parishes. That's an expensive thing. But when we first started with the rating system, Quality Start rating system, there were assessors that came out, they were getting paid by somebody, I don't know. And, that worked for everybody and that wanted to join. And if there could be some kind of way to pay, some of the assessors to come out, that the burden wouldn't be on, I'm a large school, but there are a lot of smaller schools that can't be here today because, like someone said, they're the cook, they're the teacher, they're the bus driver, they're doing it all, and they can't leave in the middle of the day and come. And, for those centers especially, to train somebody at their center to go out and do assessments and to be able to pay them to do assessments, they just can't do it. They're barely making it as it is. But with this new child care copay going on, I think we're all going to be in a lot better shape, and I look forward to exciting times in child care.
Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for your patience. You are our last speaker.
Thank you.
Comments, questions from the board?
Do we have a motion?
We do have a motion.
Okay.
The motion was to approve. And Mr. Garvey, since you're the maker of the motion, I'll let you have the last.
Well, if he's going to close, I'd like to comment prior to closing.
I was waiting for comments.
That's okay. First of all, I appreciate everyone's testimony. I thought it was, and I appreciate all the people that have participated in developing this bulletin. I think a lot of great work has been done. I want to thank the department and the team. It's an extraordinary task, quite frankly. It's probably one that we don't fully appreciate what we're trying to get done in this state. And so I appreciate the staff's diligent work along with the advisory council's work on bringing this to us. And I think even from the testimony that pointed out some potential weaknesses, you could sense that a lot of very good work has been done here. and the intentions and hopeful outcomes will reflect that. I would highlight one thing that the last speaker said to make sure people understand the significance of the copay requirement going away. We have a system in the state currently that the people that we're trying to help most can't afford, and a system that doesn't create any incentive for private providers to really provide spots for low-income students or children. And I would say, while there is, several speakers brought up the fear that this system may lead to fewer seats, I would say that with our participation in monies that have been historically available to us but we've not used, that hopefully we will provide an incentive for private providers to provide seats to low-income students. So I think time will tell, and we probably have to adjust these rules and regulations to some degree, but I would disagree with the sentiment that what we're doing here is leading to fewer seats. I think it'll lead to more high-quality seats across the board. Again, time will tell, and we may have to adjust. The one area that I'm most concerned about, and I don't know that it requires a change today, but certainly one that we will have to observe over the year, is the strain put on local leaders to do the observations. I think that's it's a very important task that it be done properly. I think the way it's outlined here in terms of redundancy and fidelity is a good one. I think requiring kind of a 10% outside observation to confirm the immediate observations is a good one. I do see that there's probably going to be a tremendous amount of strain on the lead agencies, whether that's a school district or someone else. And we, as a board, and certainly next year, we will need to look at what was that strain and how do we address it. Is it monetary? Is it programmatic? How do we address it? Because it is a very difficult task that we're asking groups, many of whom already have a full plate to do. But at this moment, I don't have a solution for that problem, unfortunately. So I think we have to move forward with it as it is, but we ought to all note that that is something we ought to be keenly aware of. I'm going to speak quickly, and I apologize I'm taking so long, but about the amendments that have been suggested. The spirit of the amendments generally are good ones. I certainly think and don't have a problem with us telling lead agencies that you need to coordinate with stakeholders. And I don't know how best to word that. Perhaps staff or somebody else can word that more properly than I. But I will take them each individually quickly and note my thoughts. I wouldn't necessarily call them objections, but my thoughts on Amendment Roman numeral 2, Item 1. The last sentence seems to be an impossibility in terms of management, that every single person has to sign off on an agreement before it becomes implemented seems impractical. Now, I think ultimately for you to be successful, you need to have the buy-in of everybody, but at the end of the day, somebody has to make a decision. And so I don't have a problem with there being a community network. Maybe that needs to be better defined. I'm open to that idea, but requiring the signature of each and every member seems an impossibility. Item 2, again, this is just saying that the network leadership team be a part of this process. Again, if we can define that properly, I have no issue with Item 2. Item 3 seems to be redundant to me. We already have an advisory council in place that has done a tremendous amount of work and done a very good job, and now we're asking there to be another group formed that then goes to the advisory council that then comes to us. I would argue that's redundant, that if the advisory council is doing their job, they'll do this item. They should do this item anyway, and we could mandate that advisory council that we already have in place do this rather than creating another group. Again, that's open for debate. It's not the end of the world one way or another. And I'm not certain on item 3, Roman numeral 3.4. Somebody else will have to tell me about this 3 email item, meaning that you don't get observed. I don't have enough practical experience to know if that's a good idea or not. So again, I want to commend, primarily my comments are to commend what has been a tremendous amount of work, and note that yes, there are going to be some things that we need to watch carefully over the next year, but in general I think this is a very good piece of policy.
Any other comments? I'll give it to Mr. Garvey for the last
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Orange-Jones.
It's been said. Just thank you to everyone who's been involved in this, certainly the department as well, for your leadership. I just wanted to note while I do agree with Mr. Romer's questions around just some questions around the lead agency and whether or not the capacity is there always to do it. I just think there were so many powerful examples today also of districts, lead agencies that have actually leaned into this and what they're learning along the way. And I felt those examples were actually very powerful. I also want to second what also Mr. Romer said, but I just think this notion of doing away with the payment, although that wasn't a big focal point of what our discussion today was, is huge. It is huge and will radically change the lives of so many families and opportunities for students and children, soon-to-be students and children. So just want to iterate how important that piece of this policy actually is as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Orange-Jones. Anyone else? Mr. Garvey.
Yes, I'd like to start by thanking the BESE members that expressed support for these changes. I've talked to the superintendent in the past few minutes during these discussions and comments, and have come to an understanding with him. The superintendent appreciates the importance of these amendments. As some BESE members and some speakers have said, there are some technical issues that he thinks need to be corrected. And so at this time, what I would propose is a substitute motion that we go with the department's original recommendation, which would pull these amendments for now, and come back tomorrow with the tweaked amendments. And in the meantime, the motion that I'm making is also to pull sections 509, 703, 705, and 709 of the department's proposal, which address these issues, so that we will not be approving those until tomorrow also.
So my understanding, your motion is
Substitute
to
motion.
approve the bulletin, substitute motion, excuse me, to approve the bulletin, pulling the parts of the bulletin that contain the amendment issues.
These issues, yes.
Who is our second? Durante, do you accept that? All right, then we have a substitute motion on the floor. Do we need to do something else?
And just also to include the approval as emergency rule effective July 1st, 2015.
Yes, we will also include that if the maker of the motion agrees, and the second. There we go. So we have a proper motion and second. Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 3, item 3.1, consideration of approval of lead agencies for the early childhood community networks. The department recommendation is to approve.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Ms. Smith, second by Mr. Gio.
Okay, now we have you're on 3.1. 3.1 on page.
And who is it? Smith and Gio.
Smith and Gio. Thank you.
Any discussion by the board?
I would like to say that in light of the discussion we just had about having a learning year, and in some places where there is a high level of confidence and comfort in the decisions about the lead agencies, but in other places people expressed that they weren't as comfortable, I think that noting that this is a one-year approval, and that this is something that we'll reconsider on an ongoing basis is really important, especially as we think about how this learning year goes. I also think that the key difference, and I heard Mr. Pierce talk about this earlier, the key difference here between what has happened with child care in the past is that they have a board, a public body that they're able to contact and to speak to. And so I think that in the amendments relative to voice that were mentioned earlier, that there is an opportunity for voice that hasn't existed before. And so I just want people to keep that in mind as we're having these discussions.
Thank you. Any other comments? Ms. Hill?
6.5, yes. I guess one of the things that I would like...
No, we're on
3.1.
3.1.
Oh, okay, so I'm looking up there.
We're wrong.
Okay.
We're sorry.
We're out. Okay.
Sorry. We'll come back to you.
So did we take action on 3.1?
No, we're fixing to. That's where we are right now.
Okay.
Any other comments? Any opposition to the motion? Motion carries. Next item.
I'd like to recuse myself.
Oh, and Dr. Beebe recuses herself. Next item.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
could I take a moment of personal privilege?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Representative Schroeder is with us today, and he's been sitting patiently, and he's been a great friend of mine and a colleague for many years, and worked closely with us on some phenomenal work that we did during this past legislative session that dealt with the compromise. And I just invited him to come to just say a few words this morning, because I think it's important that we acknowledge when we have good work and good teamwork together, and I think we experienced that. So if we could just have a few moments and allow him to come and speak, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely.
You have 3 minutes, John.
And we have the timer set. No. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your support and your presence.
I wish somebody would have said that Thursday that we only had 3 minutes. Felt like 3 years. First, Jane, thank you. And I want to start off by first saying that, sometimes I come and I get a little excited, but I, like you guys, are very passionate about what I do and what I believe is right. But you know what I have learned about life in 54 years is there's a lot of different opinions. But I do want to say a couple things. First, I want to thank my colleagues, Representatives Guyman's, Pope, Henskins, and Harris, for all their work over the last year plus. But I really want to commend the superintendent and the time and effort that he put into this issue. And I got to tell you, it was not an easy issue, as y'all know. A lot of different opinions. My job as the facilitator was just to keep people at the table, and never once did he ever not be willing to meet, to discuss, to keep going at it. And for that, I'm extremely grateful. And believe it or not, I don't really believe that my side really disagreed much. It is really about some interpretation, some language. I don't know if all the moms would agree to that, but ultimately what came out of the legislation is really what we wanted all along, was a little more transparency, more input. And as a legislator, I have to listen to my constituent. And not that you guys don't, I don't mean that at all, but it is all about the constituent. It is all about our customers, so to speak. But I really wanted to come today and thank all of you that participated, Ms. Hill, Chaz, for all the meetings. And I know you had some rough times with your family, and appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. The superintendent, certainly. But more than anybody, and Mary, thank you for your time. But let me tell you, Jane Smith is a warrior. I mean, there is no word to describe how passionate this lady is about not only what she's doing, but just the work she's done for Louisiana. I've known her now for 8 years, and she has earned my utmost respect on how she carries herself works hard, and boy, she doesn't give up. And I got to tell you, a lot of times the towel was ready to be thrown in, but you know, was the compromise perfect? Is the legislation perfect? No, but I do think it will make the process fully transparent, and you know, and if the parents don't step up, it's the parents' fault. I mean, the process is now in place for the parents to have their input, and if they don't come and if they don't show up to 6 meetings across the state or come here for any of those meetings, then that's on them. I honestly believe that we've at least come to some agreement and have something in place that everybody can have some input, and then let the chips fall where they may fall. So I just want to end and thank Jane for inviting me to come today. My colleagues are obviously home recovering from was a pretty brutal session, and I think you guys came out pretty unscathed, I think. So, but Superintendent John, I just want to thank you again. We don't get here without you, and I just appreciate your efforts.
Thank you so
Mr.
much.
Chairman.
We appreciate you being
Madam
here
Chair.
today. Mr. Garvey.
Yeah, Representative Schroeder, on a related topic, if you wouldn't mind, how
I would.
Okay, I could skip it. How are your constituents feeling about the compromise in the Common Core?
Look, I've learned in the business world that if everybody's not happy, then you probably made some progress. I think, as I said, you know, and Jim, you know this, we felt like that the process wasn't good enough, and for the type of you know, when you start talking about standards, we felt like, in our opinion, that we didn't follow the APA, and we will follow that. And when you go through that process, it's a pretty transparent process. So if the way I see it, they will have the opportunity to participate, to voice their concerns, and that's all we've ever asked for. So from that aspect, they should be pleased. I would tell you, some still aren't happy because I can't tell them that we're out of Common Core. But as I've said many times, we didn't flip a switch and get in Common Core, and we're not going to flip a switch and get out of it. I'm just happy that what I see will make it feel like it's Louisiana's process, that we develop our own standards, that we develop our own test, that we inside this board create that without outside influence. So from that aspect, I think they should be happy, but then again, it's been a long fight, and I'm never going to make everybody happy.
Okay, well, if you would, I have heard some people say or describe this compromise as, and I hate to use the word, but sham. And if you don't mind, I'd like you, if you would, tell your constituents that to the extent that I have any input on this, I will make sure that this process is not a sham, and that all of the opinions that have any substantiation behind them that are presented will be handled appropriately.
Well, every conversation I've had with the superintendent, with your president, and different board members, I mean, the bottom line is the review process will begin soon, and as long as it's transparent, and which I have no belief right now that it's not going to be, that then the parents have access. So, and I've told the parents, if they don't show up to these meetings, then that's not Jim Garvey's fault, or that's not Chaz Romer's fault. It's our fault. You have to show up and voice your concerns and participate in the process. If you don't participate in the process, you get what you get.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garvey.
And let me just add one thing, Madam Chairman. I know we're rushed for time, but just because you saw almost a unanimous vote on the bills, the package that went through, does not even begin to explain all of the phone calls and the work and the text messages and the conference calls that went into this process. And when I talk with my constituents back home, the thing that I think that we ought to be most proud of, and that is thanks to the leadership, the superintendent and others that were willing to help add additional members to the review panel that we're going to talk about later on today, but also the fact that we will be vetting the standards peer vetting of the standards in front of an open process where discussion can take place. And I have faith in that process, and I look forward to seeing that through to fruition. So I think we had I think it was a great compromise that we had. I think it's good that both sides can say we had a win-win. That's the way I look at it. And so I'm anxious to see the review panel process start to take place, and I think we're going to be pleased with it.
Well, and I just want to add, going back to something you said, I know there's some reports out in the media, and I got a text message from Representative Guyman today that there's a, and I didn't read it, but that it was a sham that we didn't do anything. Well, I don't think it's a sham to have an open, transparent process that we didn't have before. These standards weren't reviewed openly, publicly, like they will be now. They will have to go back to the legislature for an up or down vote, and if the governor, the new governor, doesn't like it, then the new governor can veto it, and then we start again. So that didn't happen before. So I think that's big. It puts everybody that's in the decision-making process in the process. So I don't know what more we could want, to be honest with you. So I think it might help that being you guys on BESE and the superintendent, make sure the media understands that.
Madam Chairman, and to follow up on what Jane mentioned about several members being added at the last minute, to the superintendent's credit, in an effort to show honesty and the idea of making this a serious effort, at my request and with you in mind in particular, he added one and maybe two people from St. Tammany Parish that have expressed opinions against Common Core to that committee. And so I think that ought to give your constituents some good feelings about the process also.
I don't know how clear I can be. I am satisfied that we got enough to say that I can say that I won. Is it perfect? No. I think the other side can say they won. And I think that's the scenario. So I'm pleased with it. I like the people who were selected. And right now, really, I have no qualm about it. None at all.
May I just say quickly, first, I want to acknowledge, while we're talking about people who are part of this process, Senator Conrad Appel and Representative Steve Carter and Chris Broadwater. I want you to know that John worked so closely with the representatives you mentioned. There were a couple of others in the mix, and I want to make sure they are represented too. And I want to say that I know you're evaluating me this week. I went through a professional learning process watching Jane Smith and John Schroeder. I learned a lot about what it means to be a leader who doesn't need to be out there taking credit for things. I learned a lot about what a great legislator does. And it was a process that, no matter how the last couple of years have gone on this issue, I want you to know I would never trade for anything. And I want to thank both of you publicly for your leadership and, frankly, mentorship of me in the process. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much for being here, and we appreciate it.
Hopefully I'm done. No more issues.
No, we want to always know we can come to you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next item. Oh, yeah. You voted on the last item.
We did.
Yeah.
Just first.
Your next item is on page 6, item 3.2. Consideration of early childhood reports requested by the board. The department recommendation is to receive.
Do you have a motion? So moved, Ms. Jones, and seconded by Dr. Bophy.
Members, you have the documentation. I don't want to belabor the early childhood discussion, but briefly, first, we are creating a registry of approved providers that professional development credits will be awarded through. I know that was a point of some discussion previously. Secondly, in August, you will be receiving a proposal to increase the per-child funding for child care providers to a level that is commensurate at the highest levels with LA4. This will be a 30 to 50% increase in the funding available to centers. I think it will create greater parity and greater opportunity for low-income Louisianans. And we will be eliminating the copay that currently is required of people who are in a state of poverty. That does not mean low income, but that means if you are in a state of poverty, under the federal guidelines, you will not be required to copay for that. Happy to take any questions, and thank you.
Madam Chairman?
Mr. Garvey?
Make sure I understood you right. The copay will not be eliminated entirely for everyone.
Correct.
Just for the very lowest. Okay, thank you.
Nor the work requirements associated with it as well.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Any objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item. Oh, I'm so sorry. Lee Barrios. I apologize. Next motion, next item.
Your next item is on page 14, item 5.1, consideration of an update report on Early Childhood Care and Education Advisory Council. The department recommendation is to receive.
Do you have a motion? We're out of order today. We're doing early childhood first. No, we pulled it from consent. I need a motion to receive this report.
So moved.
Thank you. Chaz and Dr. Beebe, second. Now, any comments or discussion? Hearing none. Any opposition to the motion? Any comment cards? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 33, item 5.3, consideration of the membership and leadership, meeting procedures, and timeline for the Standards Review Committee. A copy of the deck and a new executive recommendation has been distributed. The department recommendation is to approve.
Madam Chair, I think we skipped item 5.2, which I think we need to do. Is that
We're in
correct?
5.3 right now.
We're
Go
doing
to
it by
6.
y'all's list. You must have misnumbered.
I have no idea.
Okay, so where do you? Okay.
I am so sorry for the confusion. We're trying to get all of the early childhood together so that people that are here that need to go can do that. So we're not very good at counting, it seems. But if you'll bear with us, we'll get to the right item. Our next item, please.
6.3, I think. Is that correct?
Your next item is on page 47, item 6.3. Consideration of revisions to Bulletin 139, Louisiana Child Care and Development Fund programs required by Act 868 of the 2014 regular legislative session. The department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent and to direct the BESE president to issue a declaration of emergency effective July 1st, 2015.
So move.
Dr. Bofi, and seconded by Jay Guillen.
Members, this process simply brings the function of eligibility for receiving child care under the department. There's a schedule of transfer of functions from the Division of Child and Family Services to the department. This is the final piece in that puzzle. It comes into effect July 1, which is why we're requesting an emergency rule be issued. And effectively what this does is it allows the department to look at a family's income and to declare them eligible to receive child care. As of July 1, our team will run that function.
Any questions or comments? Hearing none, any opposition to the motion? Motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 74, item 6.4, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 137, Louisiana Early Learning Center licensing regulations. The department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent and to direct the BESE president to issue a declaration of emergency effective July 1st, 2015.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve as a notice of intent the revisions to Bulletin 137, Louisiana Early Learning Center licensing regulations, Section 305, operating without a license penalties. And further, I recommend that we approve the recommendation of the LDE requesting the BESE president to issue a declaration of emergency effective from June 18, 2015 until this policy is adopted as a rule.
Do I have a second? Dr. Moranti? Second? Comments or questions on this motion?
I do.
Ms. Hill?
What Ms. Bofi just articulated, can someone explain, I don't know for Bibi, but for myself, because all this is new, I mean, so apparently we just made some changes and other board members wasn't aware, so can you please?
Sure. And I believe we provided a briefing on this, but I'll give a quick summary of this. Members, as you know, 2 weeks ago, nearly now, a horrific tragedy occurred in East Baton Rouge Parish, which is that a young toddler by the name of Angel Green was left in the back of a vehicle twice and suffered from an overwhelming fever and passed away. This was committed because of the negligence of a woman who had repeatedly circumvented state law and was operating an underground child care facility. She has been arrested and charged with negligent homicide and with obstruction of justice and is in the hands of law enforcement. But it called on us to go back and to look at the record. And I spoke with Joy Green, Angel's mother, in what was a very difficult discussion, as you might imagine. But I came to understand a couple of things. One, while the state regulators who had shut Ms. Sheila Newman's daycare center down nearly a year ago, did everything that they need to do, and while there is certainly nothing stopping somebody from just going and breaking the law if they really choose to be unethical or to break the law, the fact of it is that the public is not as aware as it should be that there are individuals who have themselves been ordered by courts not to operate child care centers in our midst. And I'm asking you today to consider an initiative to generate awareness of that there are individuals across our state who have been ordered by courts not to operate child care centers, to require that the Department of Education operate a registry of such individuals. Second, I hope that you understand that part of the solution to people not seeking underground services is to adequately fund licensed services, and that your doing that, as we discussed earlier, is a good step in the right direction to make sure that no family ever has a financial incentive to seek below-board underground services when there are licensed services that are available to them. I can't say, and certainly would never say, that either of these things would have prevented Sheila Newman from allegedly committing unethical, illegal activities that resulted in a horrific tragedy. But I can tell you that I think there are positive steps forward that would help potentially the public be aware and have no incentive to be involved with underground providers. I hope on that basis you'll approve these as emergency rules to put them into place immediately. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Beebe.
Superintendent White, as I read over the policies, it brought to mind the concern for schools, public schools, and the fact, is there a process in place for charter schools, for example, those individuals who apply and are hired, with regard to the criminal background checks? Is there a process in place that we track at the Department of Ed level?
You mean for child cares? Is there a criminal background check required?
I'm talking about all areas.
Yes.
Within the charter schools.
Within any public school, any licensed facility, there's a criminal background check requirement. Yes.
And so because I know in another committee we'll be examining some records and so forth. So
Understood.
I just wanted to ensure that we have a process in place.
Yes, ma'am, there is. An interesting point of fact: operating an unlicensed child care is not a crime. It is subject to civil penalties, but it is not a crime. And I do think that as this process goes forward, the legislature should consider whether providing such services illegally is classified appropriately under the law. But at present, it is not a crime. However, all do undergo a criminal background check.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Any objection to the motion? Motion carries. Ms. Bovee? Dr. Bovee?
So I move that we approve the other recommendations for this bulletin. And this is as a notice of intent.
That's correct. An emergency rule. Do I have a second for that motion? Thank you, Mr. Guillot. This is just the technicalities, the other part that was a part of this bulletin that we were looking at today. Any questions, comments, any public comments? Any public comments? No. Any objection to the motion? Motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 11, item 3.3. We will go through the remaining items in order. Item 3.3 is the consideration of an update on the 2014-2015 state test participation. The department recommendation is to receive.
Do I have a motion? Thank you, Dr. Bovee. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any questions or comments?
Members,
Superintendent.
just to deliver this report to you, I was asked at this meeting to come back and discuss the issue of test participation. There was the term opt-out has been used, and there has been concern across the state about this phenomenon. I want to give you preliminary numbers. Historically, more than 99.5% of eligible students have taken state tests. This year, nearly 98.5% took state tests. So you have a 1 to 1.5% decline in participation rates. Now, you then asked us to examine how would that affect the scores that schools receive. Were these students demonstrably higher achieving? I think there has been an assumption that these students that did not participate in the test are demonstrably higher achieving. They are, I would say, modestly but not significantly higher achieving. The population of students that did not participate in this year's test is, again, 1 to 1.5% greater than what it was before. They have historically achieved basic or above 77% of the time, compared to the normal population, which is 70% of the time. So when you note that the scores of those kids historically are not far off of the scores of kids who did participate, and when you note that really there wasn't a significant change in the number of kids who participated, there was some change, but it wasn't significant, you have something that all told is not of statewide significance. Now, that does not mean that it is not of some significance in particular schools. And I could tell you, for example, in Calcasieu Parish, where 3 schools accounted for more than half of the students that did not participate. Well, obviously, that may not have a huge effect on Calcasieu Parish, but it would have a huge effect on those schools. We are working with the Superintendent Association and the School Board Association to finalize a policy to bring you that for 1 year would account for how to handle those isolated cases of schools that are dramatically impacted by a situation that statewide is of negligible impact. I can tell you that our conversations with the school boards and the superintendents have not said, well, we should just give everybody an A because this is fine. On the other hand, they have not been discussions that have said we're going to somehow punish a school that did nothing to bring the circumstance on themselves. This is a parental choice, not a school choice question. So you will receive a policy from us in August that I think will be balanced. It will not give anyone a free pass, but on the other hand, it will not unnecessarily punish schools that did nothing to themselves merit this circumstance. We're in ongoing conversations with Mr. Richard, with the superintendents, and look forward to discussing this with you more finally in August.
Questions? Dr. Beebe? Excuse me, Dr. Bagby.
Superintendent White, should we be concerned about federal funding for these schools?
No, I don't think so. I can't speak for Secretary Duncan. If I could, this would be a much different policy environment. But nevertheless, I can't speak for him, but I certainly have urged him at every step to say that this is not an appropriate issue for them to be concerned with, and that we will have a 1-year policy to address this situation. But I do not believe that the Secretary will invoke any authority in this case.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, any objections to the motion? Motion carries. Oh, I did it again. Lee Barrios. Put your card in my hand and I still did it. Thank you. Okay, raise your hand. Thank you. Next item.
Your next item is on page 12, item 4.1, consideration of the Photography 1, Photography 2, and Digital Photography as course equivalents for art for the Taylor Opportunity Program for Students core curriculum. The department recommendation is to approve.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Bofi. Do you have a second? I'll second. Thank you, Dr. Beebe.
May I provide some background?
Please.
Do we have a comment card?
We do. They're all in support, but do not want to speak.
You don't wish to speak? You sure? All right. Well, let me just tell you the story. I was on my iPhone, and I got an email. And it was a student at Sulphur High School in Ms. Bofi's district in Calcasieu Parish. And Alexis was raising an issue with me that she said, I'm looking at my diploma and TOPS requirements, and I can't understand why there's a studio art requirement and why my passion, which is photography, is not counted among these courses. I see painting, I see three-dimensional sculpture art, but there's photography is not here, and it's insulting to photographers everywhere who are passionate about this art form like I am, that it's not included. And I couldn't believe it, so I went back and I talked with my staff, and it turns out there have been years and years of debate about this issue, but the conclusion years ago is that photography is not an adequate art form to qualify for our diploma and top structures. Well, I thought about it, we talked about it, and given the great history of American photography, we couldn't understand any reason why this increasingly prominent art form is not classified. I went back to Alexis. I said, this seems like something that has to happen. We'd appreciate it if you'd come to BESE from Calcasieu, and you would be here as a representative of your craft and your art form, and that I will call on the state board to take a step toward allowing photography courses to qualify for as part of the TOPS core. I'm asking you today to do that. This is a storied art form in our country and our state. There are great photographers that are some of the great artists in Louisiana and across the country, and it is time that we honor that in our diploma structure. I hope this is something you'll support, and I hope the students being here today is evidence of their commitment to it as well. So I thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? We do have 3 cards to read into the record that are in support.
In support but wishing not to speak are Shannon Smart, Durantia Wood, and Donalyn Grimes.
Any other questions or comments? Any objections to the motion? Motion carries. Next item.
Victory.
Your next item is on page 32, item 5.2, consideration of the membership of the Accountability Commission. The department recommendation is to approve.
Members, I'd move for approval, and then I'll discuss it briefly.
I need a second. Second. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Members, we had 2 members of the Accountability Commission whose term had expired. That was Brett Duncan of Tangipahoa, who was serving as a local school board member, and Ms. Brandy Thomas, who was serving as a parent. These particular positions are typically nominated by the board president. I asked other board members for input regarding if they had particular people that they thought could serve in this capacity. I appreciate those members who did suggest some nominees, and I put forth 2 nominees, Mr. Otha Anders, who's the president of the Lincoln Parish School Board and has a long history serving in the school system. He would serve in the capacity that Mr. Duncan was previously serving. And then also put forth Mr. Bruce Langley, who comes from East Baton Rouge Parish and is in the Zachary School District. Both gentlemen happen to be African American, which is we wanted some diversity on the committee that I didn't think we represented as well as we should have, and they both come with a great deal of passion for this committee and for the quality of education in our public education system. So I put forth those two nominees and would appreciate support.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Just a quick comment. I appreciate Mr. Anders coming from Lincoln Parish. He's a stalwart in Lincoln Parish. Been at education there almost pushing 50 years, I believe, and has been a great leader of the school board. Really appreciate his willingness after much service to shed that on the commission. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Lee Barrios, we have one public speaker. Okay. Hearing no other comments, any objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 33, item 5.3, consideration of the membership and leadership, meeting procedures, and timeline for the Standards Review Committee. A copy of the deck and a new executive recommendation has been distributed. The department recommendation is to approve.
I move approval.
Second. Thank you. I have a motion by Mr. Romer and a second by Dr. Bovee. Comments?
Members, I believe we're going to walk through a brief presentation on this item just to give you a sense of this. You are not going to be asked to approve rules today, but you are being asked to approve the membership and the procedures of this body. And I wanted to make sure that you have a presentation so that we're all being very transparent as to what the expectations are for this. It is roughly an 8-month process. And we will get going. I'll start just orally, and then we can jump to the presentation when we're ready. You commissioned us to do this before the legislation, to be clear. This is in line with the legislation, however. So this brings what you'd already asked us to do in line with the legislation. You see the membership of the committees in front of you in your booklets on page 35, 36, 37, 38. These members were not nominated by the department. They were nominated by bodies that you have already authorized to nominate individuals. So in other words, we're coming back with a set of people that you have authorized. Now, we selected them based on the categories that you gave us. We then went back to those people. We said, teachers of reading, teachers of mathematics, school systems, nominate your people. And we selected them by trying to create racial, gender, geographic, and subject matter diversity. And frankly, when you have all those constraints, you only come up with so many different combinations of people you can have, and that's what you see in front of you. Final point on this. There was a concern expressed that not every philosophical perspective was represented in the group of 92 that was originally arrived at. And so, in order to ensure and guarantee a wide diversity of perspectives, 9 members were added, also geographically, also racially, also subject matter diverse, but ensuring a broad philosophical diversity as well. Those are listed as BESE appointments on the Kindergarten through 2 Committee, on the English Language Arts Committee, and on the Mathematics Committee. The committees will start to meet in July. Excuse me, the process will start in July, and I'll talk about this in the presentation when we get there. That process will start through an online review process. Every standard will be posted in an online portal. We are currently waiting on approval from the Division of Administration for the contracts to finalize that process and put them online. As soon as they approve those contracts, the standards will be put online. And any member of the public may register any thought about those standards. They will be focused on the standards themselves, however. After a month and a half of that process, an independent entity, the Southern Regional Education Board, will aggregate those comments and will present them for an initial meeting of all 4 committees to be held here in Baton Rouge. All of these meetings, as Representative Schroeder mentioned, are public meetings. Every single one of them. Every single one will have minutes. Every single piece of those minutes will be submitted to the legislature for its consideration. The 4 committees will start with that public comment. And over the course of the fall, they will hold a series of public meetings in all of the congressional districts, as per the new law, where different committees take up their subject matter. Each group is chaired by a specific individual, and you are considering also today that chairperson nomination. That will be reflected on the slides as soon as they show. That chairperson will run each meeting, and they will ask members of each committee to essentially do work between the meetings. Members of the committee will come back and will present all of that work in a public setting. The board will deliberate, the committee will deliberate on it, and the public will then be able to comment at each meeting. The job of the chairperson will be to ensure that the ultimate product that is sent to the standards committee is coherent and reflects the values submitted in the public comment and the values of the committee members. By your March meeting for a new BESE board, there will be a final product submitted to this board. This board is required under the law to approve Louisiana student standards by March 2. That then commences the Administrative Procedures Act process required under the law. Under that process, the committees on education may hold oversight hearings, and they may choose to reject or not reject what has been submitted to them. They may not edit it. Like the MFP, they may choose to reject it or not. And subsequent to that, the governor may choose to reject it or not. None of that is new. That was not new legislation. That was the Administrative Procedures Act, which is true for all of the other rules that you promulgate. If in the course of that process, the governor or the legislature says, no, you got to go back and do more work, then we have to go back and do more work. The standards as they are would remain the same, and BESE would start this process. So it's an iterative process to try to get to agreement among 3 bodies, BESE, the governor, and the legislature. But nothing would change while we're seeking that consensus. Let me finally say that the most important point of agreement in all of this process was not the BESE board's perspective winning out over the legislature or the legislature winning out over someone else. That wasn't it. It was about the idea of trusting professional educators to do a review of the process that is thorough, that is honest, that is transparent, and that is good for children. And that once that's complete, we have to trust what they say to be what we adopt. And that's the whole premise of what's been set up. I don't think you see a lot of people on here who are pro-Common Core or anti-Common Core. There may be a couple, but I don't think there are many. Instead, I think these people come to it with the perspective of, yeah, there's some things that are good with it. There are some things we should change. Let's do what we need to do to change it. Let's keep what we need to keep. And I think that is overwhelmingly the mindset you will hear echoed among this group. I think probably at this point you have the presentation. We probably don't need to go through it in too great detail. I might, Bridget, just ask you to move through it. Well, I think I've probably said all I need to say.
What about the chairs?
Sorry, why don't we just look at the chairs? Yes, thank you. Let's go. Let's just look at the list so that I can identify the chair people. Okay, I'll just use the bulletin. For the steering committee, the nominated board chair is Ann Smith of Vernon Parish, who is the curriculum director in Vernon Parish. In the I'm sorry. On the steering committee, it is Regina Sanford of St. Tammany Parish who has been nominated as the board chair. She is the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction for St. Tammany Parish. In the kindergarten through 2, I apologize, it is Ann Smith of Vernon Parish who has been nominated as the committee chairperson. In the English Language Arts Committee, and I'll just come back to that one. In the Mathematics Committee, the nominee is in English Language Arts, it is Lori Carlton of Plaquemines Parish. And in Mathematics, it is Charlotte Booth in Rapides Parish. I'm sorry, my document just doesn't have that noted. So again, it is Charlotte Booth in Mathematics. It is Lori Carlton in English Language Arts. It is Ann Smith in kindergarten through 2nd. And it is Regina Sanford of St. Tammany Parish on the steering committee. We have nominated these individuals because of their experience at a district leadership level. They are experienced in facilitating school board meetings and school board presentations. They are not strictly classroom educators. And in this case, we did think it was important to nominate individuals who are, again, geographically diverse, but at the same time who have experience facilitating large public presentations. Each of these people has demonstrated a history of being able to do that, and in a non-biased and very collaborative way. Their superintendents and other references have confirmed this, and we ask you to confirm their nomination on that basis as well. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I apologize for the technology, and I apologize for the delay.
Thank you. Any questions or comments before public comments?
Comment. I just want to say publicly that I believe in this process, that I support it. I think it's going to be a transparent process, and I just want to commend and thank everyone involved in making this happen. I just wanted to state that publicly.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. I was hoping that the superintendent could confirm my understanding. The process, as you mentioned about what was laid out in the legislation, you described pretty well, and you described what would happen if there is a disagreement about what the legislature sees with our changes as compared to what we are recommending in February, we being the BESE board, the new BESE board. And that next step would be that we go back to the old standards. But could you confirm that if, for some reason, such as BESE doesn't take this process seriously, which I have said earlier that I believe we will, the legislature can pass new legislation changing the whole deal, including possibly scrapping whatever standards we're proposing and forcing us to go back to the old standards.
Correct. The legislature always has the right to do that, and BESE has the right to do that. So BESE can make those changes, the legislature can make those changes.
So to point out for anybody that's interested, that is a huge incentive for BESE to take this process seriously, and I think that that should give a lot of people comfort with the thought that BESE will, in fact, take this process very seriously.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
And just to follow up on that, I think it's important to note that as we work through this process of trying to have a balanced approach, I think there's an incentive, just like Mr. Garvey said, there's an incentive to get this right. And if there's areas that we feel that need to have work done to make it more appropriate for age levels, I think you're going to see that happening. I think there's a real incentive for this review panel to get the job done correctly, because probably if they don't, they're going to lose their job. There will be another panel appointed, probably in a different way, maybe with a new governor and whatever the process is. But I think there's the concern has been that maybe this was just going to be a rebranding. I don't see it that way, because I think there's some stellar educators on this panel, and I have confidence in them that they're going to dissect, listen to the public, and try to get this process done right. I really have confidence that that's going to take place. But I do think the legislation puts some safeguards in to make sure that some of the concerns others have expressed we will validate the process. I really feel confident about that. And again, I think the names of the folks that are added to the committee that are BESE appointments, as I look at them, I think they can go toe-to-toe with anyone. I think they'll express the concerns of both sides, and I think you're gonna be pleased with this process. That's how I feel about it, and I'm confident that that BESE will see the job through, and that the review panel will take seriously this job that's given to them. And I want to thank the superintendent and others that have helped to promote that.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Dr. Beebe.
Two things. Again, I applaud the opportunity for transparency. In fact, from the very beginning, it was stated that we needed to review because of the concerns, and I think that this is a step in the right direction. Superintendent White, you and I have had this, and I apologize for having to step out, but we had conversations with regard to cursive writing, and that some constituents have communicated to me directly the desire to include writing as part of the standards, and certainly you have no objection, so I don't know if you addressed this already, but is there a possibility that in the discussions that we could include cursive writing? And on another note, as we move forward to the review process, I do realize that these reviews will be done in the congressional districts, but is it possible for us to have the televised or as we do here, the recorded meetings and discussions? So, I know as part of the legislative process, oftentimes I'm unable to come to Baton Rouge, but I can sit in my office multitasking and listen to the debates and so forth. So has any thought been given to including that as a part of the process?
I think it's a fantastic idea. Let me, if you wouldn't mind, I haven't talked about the cost of it and such with my team. If you wouldn't mind if I could report back at our August meeting, which will be prior to the launch of the first meeting, I'd like to report back on that. But my initial response would be it's a great idea and we should do it. I just want to make sure I understand what the cost involved would be.
And with regard to cursive writing?
I see no problem with including cursive writing in the standards. My only urging would be that we hear from the committee first. I'm sure this will be voiced in the committees, and then we come back and review it.
Any other questions or comments? I see we have a distinguished group who has joined us that I'm sure we will hear about in just one moment. At this moment, though, we have two speakers on this issue, Lee Barrios and Dennis Burke, if you'll make your way down.
Lee Barrios, retired teacher from St. Tammany. I also want to express, you asked Representative Schroeder how his constituency felt about this, and I want to convey to you that after the initial shock by parents that it wasn't a done deal, so to speak, about dropping the Common Core, they realized that this is the way that this should be done. Of course, it should have been done 4 years ago, but they're up for it. They are preparing statewide. They want to make sure that they understand what's going on. They're going to they're devising a method to follow the process so that there is collaboration statewide amongst parents. And of course, it would be teachers that do that also. I do have some concerns. Well, these are concerns that a number of people have voiced. And I hope that if you don't specifically address them in a little bit of discussion now, that you will address them. And they may already be worked out, and it's just not part of the PowerPoint. First of all, the question is, how will the congressional district meetings be conducted? Who will organize those? Who will facilitate those? What will the structure be? I think that's pretty important to get that done ahead of time. Again, the video or the audio recording, if you really want public input, it's a necessity that you have those live streamed or at least archived for the public to watch those. Let's see. The public comment portal. It's listed on the PowerPoint as being from June through August. We're halfway through June already, and I checked the website, and if it is on there, it's difficult to find. I don't think it's on there yet. Superintendent White can tell us that. When will that go up, and will it be sort of have everything sort of in one spot? You don't have to push all these links so that the public will understand how to give their input through the portal. Who will write and publish the minutes and the drafts of the meetings? Will it be a member of the committee, or will the Department of Ed provide somebody to do that? And very importantly, as far as I'm concerned, I know for all the standards reviews and the process, there's been a facilitator, an outside facilitator paid to come in and facilitate these meetings. But I don't see anything about having a professional facilitator, which is very important for committee meetings like these. What reference materials will both the public and the committees be given to work from? The concern about it being just a rewrite of the Common Core or rebranding will depend somewhat on what materials they're working from. So if it starts out as simply tweaking the Common Core standards, really that's not going to be sufficient since the Common Core standards are perceived as the problem. Will we be provided with our previous 2009 content standards? Will they have also the National Council of Teachers of Math and Teachers of English standards as references and cross-references? And I think that's all the major concerns that we have. I hope you'll discuss a little bit of those. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barrios.
I just would say, members, that so you have a sense of this, if you've served on another task force, such as the MFP task force, for example, this would be similar to that. BESE staff will work with department staff, but this is a BESE assigned responsibility from the legislature to record the meetings and the minutes and to make appropriate submissions of those into the record. I think that probably handles the bulk of the staffing concerns. With respect to materials, there will be similar procedures. There will be a 10-day requirement for the agenda to post prior to. All background materials will be posted prior to, also in concurrence with other working group type meetings, the commissions that BESE holds, Accountability Commission, MFP Task Force, and so on.
Thank you.
As a follow-up, Superintendent White, certainly the members of this committee would have the autonomy to do their own research and bring in their research.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Superintendent, what about on the congressional hearings? All of those will have to be conducted, I guess, during the fall, and then preparation made. I'm trying to get the timeline in my mind. So if we have all of the hearings in the congressional areas,
Bridget,
I know you
can we go to the
touched on that
schedule?
just a little bit, but I just want to make sure.
Why don't we just review the schedule?
Yeah, I think that's important
quickly.
for the
So
public
we're waiting
to be able
to
to
see if
know.
we can get that up. We're going to go ahead and let this other gentleman speak since he's been waiting so patiently at the table.
Thank you very much. I'm Dennis Burke. I'm from Jefferson Parish. And I have two concerns for the committee. And one is that despite copious assurances and the transparency and all the other stuff, because it was so hard to get the so-called compromise, I, among many others, fear that in the final analysis, this will result in nothing more than basically a rebrand of Common Core. That's one. My second concern is, what about literacy? Not just as far as Common Core or the state standards are concerned, but what about literacy, period? This is from, I don't see anything specifying the best way to teach reading, which is undoubtedly phonics. I don't think there's any mandate from BESE or anybody else that phonics and phonics only, nothing to do with whole word, be used to teach reading in the earliest grades. And I think when the committee goes through this process, it should have something in there about phonics and phonics only and the elimination of whole word or any vestige in it. This is from Stanford University. Reading is the gateway skill. It opens the door to all other learning. There's no great mystery to teaching reading. It's as easy as ABC. The best approach for the overwhelming majority of children is systematic phonics. The simple concept of teaching 26 letters, 44 sounds, and the 70 most common ways to spell those words. For most children, learning this basic code unlocks 85% of the words in the English language. This is not me, this is Stanford. And regarding the phonics versus whole word controversy, here's the Stanford paper says, research in reading instructions shows conclusively that whole language does not work and that phonics-based instruction does. Empirical scientific evidence for the effectiveness of phonics stands in stark contrast to the unvalidated whole language philosophy. Keith Stanovich, a well-respected researcher, wrote that direct instruction and alphabetic coding facilitates early reading acquisition is one of the most well-established conclusions of all behavioral science. Maggie Bruck, an associate professor of psychology and pediatrics at McGill University, said she has reviewed the entire database of educational research and has not found a single example published in a major peer-reviewed journal that showed that whole language worked. Given all this, why isn't BESE mandating phonics only to teach reading in the earliest grades? Does BESE care about literacy? Now, one more important thing to distinguish. There's phonics, there's whole word, there's a mix of whole word and phonics. The mix of whole word and phonics is at least as injurious as whole word only. And I can explain that later to anybody who wishes to hear about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And let me say that you will have two opportunities in which to present this, one either this K through 2 or the content meetings, but also on the portal.
Oh, and I'll be there.
Yeah.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chairman,
Mr.
if I could
Garvey.
address the speaker. I agree with you on the importance of phonics and the lack of importance of whole word method. But I think the question that you have kind of highlights some of the confusion that there's been about Common Core. Common Core, as I'm sure you've heard people say many times, is a set of standards. Phonics would be an example of how you teach to a standard. And how you teach to a standard, BESE has left up to the locals. So in your case, it would be the Jefferson Parish School Board that would decide whether to use phonics or whole word. BESE is leaving it up to them.
Well,
and that's why we haven't addressed it, because it's more like a curriculum.
Shouldn't BESE address it? Other states have mandated the teaching of phonics because whole word is so destructive.
Well, maybe
BESE
BESE should, but it wouldn't be part of the standard setting process or the standard review process.
Is that a fact? BESE
Gentlemen,
cannot
if
say...
you'll let me interrupt,
Yes,
this is really not germane to what we're doing right now, but you will have the opportunity
Okay.
to indeed express your opinions. We thank you for coming today, and certainly if you and Mr. Garvey want to get together later and resolve some
happy
of these
to.
issues,
Okay.
that would be fine.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much for being here this morning.
Madam Chairman, I just wanted to point out in response to Ms. Smith's line of questioning the schedule. You'll see that we're doing meetings over the course of the fall in Baton Rouge, Shreveport, Alexandria, Crowley, Covington, as needed in the beginning of December, if needed, and then those haven't been scheduled, but they would be at various locations, and then the final meeting in New Orleans. So we are covering every congressional district. Also, all of these meetings will be on different days, so that somebody who wants to attend every meeting could attend every meeting.
Thank you, Superintendent. Dr. Beebe?
Just for additional clarification.
Yes.
So the process is such that there are committee discussions. The audience will be present. If there are concerns or objections, will audience members have a designated time, as we're having here, to voice concerns?
It is. It's subject to the the public meetings law. So every item requires public comment.
Mr. Romer.
And I'm planning on closing, if that's okay with everyone.
Please.
My last speaker. All right. I want to start off by making a couple points. One, I want to congratulate BESE that much of what we put in place prior to the legislature is what the legislature used for the basis of their legislation. I think that's important to note, and I commend you for that effort. I would point out a change that they made that I think is a good one, and there's a reason for the change. One of the items they did change in the law, and we're now addressing it in our process, is the timeline. Our original timeline took more time to do this process. The legislature wanted the timeline to be timely so that if we did not take what they deemed to be appropriate action, they would have a legislative session coming up where they could. So to go to the earlier comment of the risk of there not being substantive discussion here, the change in the timeline guarantees there's going to be substantive discussion. And that's an important note. And we agreed to that during the discussion without much debate other than just the practicality of can we get it done in the time. And we concluded in working with the superintendent that we could get it done in that time period. So that's an important thing to point out. The second thing I would state is this board, for more than just the last few months, knew and had publicly stated that we know there will be areas that we can improve without question. We also know there's areas that are probably not appropriate, and we want those to address. And so the legislation merely reflected what we had already stated, which is we too wanted to make sure we came up and ended up with the best standards review process and the best process we could. So I think this legislative session reflects our own sentiment. The last thing I would say is I do want to thank Jane Smith, who, while there were others working, I think she was a critical component in making sure the lines of communication remained open, because there was obviously some ability for the legislature to cause problems with the process, and there was certainly some ability on the part of BESE to draw a line in the sand and say we were unwilling to go any further. We avoided that kind of showdown with the idea of making sure we accomplished two things. Or three things. One, a process that seemed open and fair and transparent and would reflect that. I think we've done that. Two, that we ended up with standards that we as a state could be proud of and maintained our ability to be competitive with the rest of the world. And three, maintain stability during the process. One of the things we've tried hard to avoid during this, and it's been difficult, is total chaos while we review the standards. And the fact that we needed stability for our classrooms and for our teachers and our instructors. And I think this process achieved that. So again, I want to thank the superintendent and his staff have done a tremendous job. I again want to thank Ms. Smith for reaching out to me early and saying that she thought she could help in this process, and she did a great job. So again, I would ask for the approval of this board and thank everyone for their help. Thank you.
I have,
Dr.
thank
Bibby.
you, thank you, Madam Chairman. I have one observation, and so often I hear from educators, look at the times shown or reflected on the chart. Is there a possibility that we could schedule some in the afternoons from 3:30 or say 4 p.m. till 8 or what have you, to afford educators, classroom teachers, and administrators the opportunity to at least be in the audience, to hear the discussions and concerns?
We will certainly take it under advisement. I think our experience has been that for many of the committee members, for example, this will be their paid job. In other words, they will be receiving a per diem, they'll be coming here as part of their day-to-day responsibilities, and that they will want to be home with their families at night. So I guess I have some fear that the minute you schedule something at night, you hear the other concern, which is you're taking me away from my family, you're making me drive at night. Oftentimes we have long drives here in the winter. But why don't we, that's a good point, and why don't we take it under advisement, and let's see, we can report back to the board in August as to the status of that and the streaming.
That's what I think. I think it goes back to your original thing about being able to stream it so that people would be able to participate from that perspective.
That's a good point.
Any other comments? Hearing none. Any objection to the motion? Motion carries. Before we move on, I think Dr. Buffy has a point of personal privilege.
That's right. I would like to introduce our Teacher and Principal of the Year finalists. Before I do that, because I know the board members are going to get so excited and taking pictures and all those things, I want to make sure that the board members know that they're invited to the awards gala that will be on Saturday, July 11th. And if you haven't done so already, make sure that you let Shan know by the 23rd if you're able to participate. This is a very exciting event. We have members of Dream Teachers in the audience. I know they're working really hard to prepare a great celebration for our Teachers and Principals of the Year, and I know that they would love to see board members there at that event. So, having said that, I do also, board members, just want to let you know that the Teachers and Principals of the Year that are with us today have a really special week as they are going to participate in their interviews this week. I believe there are also some videoing that they're going to be doing, and so some of us get a little uncomfortable with that, so it's quite a big week for them, and we appreciate their time over the summer, especially sharing their passion for the profession. I also want you to know that they've already been through a whole lot in this process. Their districts nominated an elementary, middle, high school, and Teachers of the Year, and then also a Principal of the Year. From there, they created their applications, which included their resume, evidence of their students' results, an instructional video that was done by our teachers, not our principals, answers to some essay questions, and then recommendations from their peers, parents, or the community. So they've already participated in a whole lot. Then they were observed. So I understand this is a surprise observation. And these are members of our network teams, I believe, that go out and conduct these interviews or observations. So there's already been a whole lot of activity to prepare to get ready to find out who our Teachers of the Year for the state and Principal of the Year for the state will be. So I'm going to go ahead and announce them by region of the state. So I'm going to ask that for our first group, we have Mr. Garvey, Ms. Jones, Dr. Beebe, our at-large members, Superintendent White, and the officers come forward. I'm going to announce a group of Teachers and Principals of the Year. You'll take your pictures with them, and then we'll go to another region of the state, if that's okay with you guys. So, from St. Tammany Parish, we have Kelly Stumps from Woodville Elementary School. Congratulations, Kelly. We have Evan Stout from Collegiate Academies, which is Sci Academy, another Teacher of the Year finalist. A Principal of the Year finalist from Algiers Charter School Association, Renee Lewis Carter. Jefferson Parish Teacher of the Year from Geraldine Boudreaux Elementary School, Pablo Menendez Pato. Another one from Jefferson Parish, Mr. Garvey, from Leo E. Kerner Junior Elementary School, Suzanne Boardley. From Terrebonne Parish, we have Summer Skarkey. Summer, can you say the name of your school for me, please? LaCache Middle School. Thank you, Summer. Board members, would you please join them for a picture? So for our next group of teachers and principals of the year, I'm going to ask that Ms. Harris, Mr. Guillot, our at-large members, Superintendent and Superintendent White, and the officers join these teachers and principal of the year finalists. We have Nicole Vasquez. Nicole is from Caddo Parish, Captain Street High School. She is a teacher of the year finalist. Donna Manuel from Sabine Parish at Florine High School. Principal of the Year from Vernon Parish, Rose Pine Elementary School, Carolyn Bosley. Teacher of the Year from Lincoln Parish, this is Ruston High School, April Winstead. Cassandra Floyd, Principal of the Year from Catahoula Parish, Harrisonburg High School. Rapides Parish, Alexandria High School, Dwayne Urbina, Principal of the Year.
Ms. Brophy, can you remind us how it is that you know so much about this Teacher of the Year process?
The reason I know so much about this process is because I was honored to be the State Teacher of the Year in 2010. It's a very special program to me. Thank you, Mr. Garvey. So we'll ask Mr. Guillot, Mr. Romer, Ms. Hill, our at-large members, and Superintendent White to join the last region of our state. We are going to start with, I'm trying really hard to get your names right. Cherie Fontenot from Evangeline Parish at James Stevens Montessori. She is a Principal of the Year. Averil Turner from Tangipahoa Parish at Westside Middle School, another Teacher of the Year. Principal of the Year from Ascension Parish, Gonzales Primary School, Jamie Williams. Okay, Joseph. Is it David or David? David. Joseph David from Calcasieu Parish at LeBlanc Middle School, Principal of the Year. And Jim Carroll, Principal of the Year from West Feliciana High School. something else? Miss Jeffers? Okay. Nope. Jennifer Jeffers, Concordia Parish Teacher of the Year. Mr. Guillot, this is your district. While they're taking the picture, I just want to say, I love this program. I appreciate Dream Teachers so much. You guys are going to just have a wonderful night. I hope you enjoy that celebration. The one thing I don't like about it is that it's set up as a competition. And so you are sitting among your peers, people who believe passionately about students and the future of Louisiana. And so I just encourage you to take this time to get to know each other. I'm sure that you're going to continue to call on each other throughout your career. And I really hope that you're able to develop the friendships that are as meaningful and important as I've been able to in this process. So thank you so much. And congratulations.
Thank you so much for being here. Good luck to you, and we hope that you... Okay.
What? The event is black tie, and we're going to hear from Mr. Harriman about the event.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, Dr. Bofi. I appreciate that. On behalf of Dream Teachers, my name is Ben Harriman, the current chairman of Dream Teachers, and just wanted to take a real quick moment to say thank you to BESE and to the Department of Education for all the support. At Dream Teachers, we're all about trying to rally the private community and the business community to support educators because we believe so strongly in what they do and how important it is, and we just thank the effort that y'all do in putting forth this program and saying that it's important and allowing us to come alongside and give them some recognition and help give them some recognition because we believe so strongly in how important each and every one of them are. And so we just wanted to say thank you for that. And we have sent you an invite, so we would love to see everybody join us on July 11th for the symposium and gala, and we'll certainly enjoy it and have a chance to let our hair down and recognize that teachers and educators rock. So thank you.
Good. Thank you. And thank you all, and best wishes and good luck. Next item.
Your next item is on page 39, item 6.1, consideration of revisions to Bulletin 138 Jumpstart Program. The department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent.
So moved by Mr. Guillot, seconded by Mr. Garvey. Any comments or questions, Superintendent? No. Any objections to the motion? Hearing none, motion carries. Next item.
Your next item is on page 41, item 6.2, consideration of policy revisions relating to the art course requirements for the Tufts University diploma. The department recommendation is to approve as notice of intent for Bulletin 741 and non-public 741.
I need a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Garvey, seconded by Dr. Beebe. Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, next item.
That concludes the agenda.
BESE members, we have one of the shortest SIT committee meetings coming up, I think, so we're going to take it before lunch. It was scheduled for 11:30. We got staff ready to roll to do a fast changeover. Hold on to your seats.